Good morning. The August 18th, 2021 meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel is called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Arkansas Department of Education auditorium and ask that you please silence all electronic devices and ask that our Zoom audience make sure that you have muted your microphones, and it'd be much appreciated. And say good morning to our panel members. Good morning, Dr. Williams. Good morning, Mr. Hodges. Glad to have you with us, and good morning to all of our members here. I don't know of any additional information that we need to discuss before jumping in. Looking around the room, hearing none. All right. Mr. Johnston, we are ready for item number 1.
Good morning. Tim Johnston, DESE Charter Unit. IDEA has submitted an application to establish an open enrollment school in 2 locations in Arkansas beginning in the 2023-2024 academic year. Both locations are going to follow a college prep education model. Dan Fishman is the Senior Vice President of Growth. He is here representing the charter. He has several guests with him, and Ms. Mary Claire Hyatt will come forward to cover our process for speakers.
Good morning, Mary Claire Hyatt, ADE Legal. Again, just for the benefit of those that were not here yesterday, the procedure is first everyone will be sworn who is not an attorney. Following that, the applicant will have 20 minutes to present its application. There's no opposition to this application, so you can go right into any additional time that's necessary. Following that, we'll cover any remaining legal concerns and any remaining feedback from the Internal Review Committee. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and then vote. Also, for the speakers, if you would please, when you come to the microphone or if you're on the Zoom, make sure before you speak you identify who you are and where you're from for the record, please. And if there aren't any additional questions, we're ready to begin.
Ms. Hyatt, all parties speaking on behalf of IDEA application, get to my right page. Yes, if you will stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much. All right. And who's going to start us off? And do we have a presentation for them?
We do, and I'll also, if it's permitted, can I give you all a hard copy?
Perfect. Thank you. All right. It'll take me a second to get to my timer.
There is a video. Yes. Okay.
We'll start when you're ready, Dan.
All right. Well, good morning.
That one.
Wrong Dan. Oh.
Wrong.
All right. Well, good morning, Madam Chair, CAP members. Thank you so much for hearing our application this morning. We're very grateful. My name's Dan Fishman. My colleagues will introduce themselves in just a moment, but we're here to present IDEA Public Schools Arkansas to you. We spent the last 2 years getting to know the state, community leaders, business leaders, civic leaders, fellow educators, as we thought about whether or not IDEA can create world-class schools in this state. And after that time, we're confident we can, and we're here to present to you a little bit about us and why we want to be able to operate schools here. So IDEA Public Schools is in its 21st year. We have a long track record. In the entirety of that time, we've had the same mission, which you see on the page in front of you. Our mission is and always has been to prepare underserved students for success in college and for citizenship. And that will be our mission in Arkansas. That's who we are. Now, a little bit about the people you'll hear today. I'm going to ask everyone on the IDEA team, the 3 of us here, the 2 of us joining remotely, to introduce ourselves, our position, and what we taught if we were a teacher. So I'm Dan Fishman. I'm the Senior Vice President for Growth, and I taught high school history.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Garza. I'm the Chief Schools Officer, and this is my 32nd year in education, and I taught for 11 years in 3rd and 4th grade ELA.
Good morning, my name is Sam Gessling. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer. I taught 6th grade mathematics at IDEA. I was also a middle school and high school principal at IDEA.
Jasmine?
Hi, good morning. My name is Jasmine Leon Wing. I serve as Vice President of Treasury. I've been in the education field for over a decade, and I am a proud first-generation college student.
Thanks, Jasmine. Dolores?
Good morning. My name is Dolores Gonzalez. I'm IDEA's Chief Program Officer. I'm starting my 20th year in education, and I was an elementary special education teacher.
Thank you. We're also joined by our council if you have questions where they can be helpful. So we want to tell you a little bit about IDEA and why we exist. Sam?
Thanks, Dan. I worked at IDEA as a teacher, as I mentioned, at our 2nd IDEA campus, and also as the founding principal at our 6th campus in the Texas-Mexico border. The gentleman that you see here in the picture, Angel Escobedo, is one of my former students, and he joined our school as a 9th grader. He came in having many challenges learning, particularly the fact that, as he told me on his first day when I shook his hand, as I did with every student that walked in the door of our school each morning, he said, look, most of my friends are in jail, and this is going to be a school that's going to be hard for me. And it was hard for him. He had teachers that pushed him very hard. He worked carefully with them, and they really convinced him of his greatness. He worked hard over those 4 years. He received a full ride to a number of colleges within Texas upon his senior year, including Baylor and Texas Tech. And you see him in this picture headed to Nebraska to work with his family in the cornfields there. This was taken, this picture that he sent to me, and this is where he came from. Heading off to Tech, he felt alone and nervous because, as he told me, there weren't many students who looked like him coming to that campus, but he persevered. In his sophomore year, he was struggling with his major of engineering, and he switched to a financial planning major. That was what he needed in college. He graduated, and he is now one of the only certified financial planners under the age of 30 who speaks Spanish in Texas. He lives in Austin and is a partner at his firm. Very proud of him, and he told me this is what he wants to do, is to help folks like himself and his family who can become a part of the American dream and understand how money works in this country. We have many, many Angel Escobedos at IDEA Public Schools. A bit more about IDEA. You can see we were founded in 2000, 77,000 students. 86% of our students come from a low-income background, and we've had 100% of our graduating seniors accepted to college this past year. More than 70% of our graduates were the first in their family to go to college.
So, we'll talk a lot about IDEA. We also are a very data-driven organization, which is why I want to make sure we put this front and center. So Stanford University has an education center called Credo that studies the outcomes of various entities. They performed a longitudinal multi-year study of charter networks and district schools to see how students were impacted. What Stanford found when they looked at IDEA students compared to students who had applied to IDEA, so similar motivation if you believe that's a factor, but did not get in because the schools were oversubscribed and went to their local district school. IDEA students, compared to those virtual pairs, achieved the equivalent of 80 extra days of learning every year and 74 extra days of reading every year. So that doesn't mean that we kept them for 80 extra days. It doesn't mean we kept them for 74 extra days. It means 1 year in an IDEA classroom was as though they were exposed to 80 extra days of learning. So you multiply that by 12 years, what Stanford found is attending an IDEA school was the equivalent of getting 5 extra years of education over a K-12 tenure as compared to attending the neighborhood school that a student otherwise would have attended. And this held constant for income, parent education level, all kinds of other factors.
In this slide, you can see that as we have grown since 2014, we have continued to improve our performance for students academically. You can see that we've been able to increase the number of students matriculating to some of the nation's top colleges, the acceptances to those colleges, and our AP Scholars have gone up. AP Scholar representing a student who has gotten a 3 or higher on 3 different AP tests. So again, we've gotten improved academic results as we've continued to add schools and grow across Texas, Louisiana, and now into Florida. This slide shows that we've been part of the Best High Schools U.S. News and World Report rankings, as well as the J. Matthews High School Challenge Index. J. Matthews previously affiliated with the Washington Post. Those performance ratings are based upon the number of students taking AP courses, the number of students passing those courses, and the percentage of students coming from a low-income background in those schools.
All right, I'm going to talk about our program, and please note that this is our program currently in Texas, Florida, and Louisiana, but we will adjust as necessary based on the rules and regulations for the state of Arkansas. So our focus in K through 2nd is to ensure that we are teaching our students how to read. And so we use Reading Mastery Transformations, which is a direct instruction program that builds phonemic awareness for our students. Our goal is to ensure that every 2nd grade student ends the year on or above grade level. When they have finished, when they are fluent readers, then we transition them to reading to learn. Every child gets math, science, social studies, and electives daily. Our electives include PE, AR, which is where they get time to read and be able to test comprehension, and a hotspot where they get to engage in adaptive math software. In 3rd through 5th, we teach some of the same subjects daily. However, we do also have we make sure that they engage in rigorous texts and discussions. We use Wit and Wisdom, which is our core reading curriculum. In addition to that, if we have any students that are not on grade level, we have an intervention program called Critical Student Intervention. And our goal there is to be able to make 2 years of growth in 1 year for these students. In our 6th through 8th, we ensure that we begin their focus on pre-AP courses and ensure that they're being prepared for high school. Our students begin language courses and have the opportunity to use adaptive self-paced learning programs. As I mentioned before, we do have that student intervention program, Critical Student Intervention, and you see us use it primarily here because many of our students who enter 6th grade are below grade level. And so we have seen really great results in this program in being able to get 2 years of growth in 1 year. The goal of our high school program is to prepare our students for the rigors of college and to ensure that they have the skills necessary to thrive in high school. As you can see on the chart in the slide, we have our students take at least 11 AP courses. In addition to that, they are engaged in a 4-year course sequence that we call Road to and Through College. And our students are able to learn about the academic, social, and financial realities of college. Students will attend at least 10 colleges and universities during their time in high school. They engage regularly with a college counselor. We have about a 35-to-1 ratio. And they ensure that they are able to stay on track and they can answer all the questions that a student may have when it comes to college. Our seniors apply to at least 6 different universities and colleges, and our college counselors work with them to ensure that they find the right match and fit for them, and then they work to ensure that they are finding the best deal financially for the students.
All of our schools offer extracurricular programming for students at our college preparatory high schools, 6th grade through 12th grade, including athletics. We offer basketball, soccer, volleyball, cross country, and cheerleading at each of our schools, and some of our schools offer additional athletic opportunities. In addition, we also offer arts programming at our schools, which varies from campus to campus. Some schools have a marching band, some have an orchestra. We even have mariachi groups with some of our schools on the border. We also offer student councils and other student programming and clubs.
So I currently have a 6th grade son, Isaiah, who is attending IDEA, and so let me tell you a little bit about his day. So in the morning, I drop him off at 7:15. He is greeted every day by the principal, who is on duty there. He gets out of the car and he walks to the cafeteria and goes with his friends and enjoys a free breakfast that's provided to all of the students. Once he finishes breakfast, he and his friends will walk to their homeroom where they are greeted by their teacher. And currently, he is reading the novel Bud Not Buddy, and he's studying ratios in math. But in addition to his pre-AP coursework, he also gets to have fun and enjoy a free lunch with all of his friends during lunch. And he gets to participate after school in our 21st Century program, where he gets to enjoy different academic or athletic activities. Teachers are really great and responsive, and I might get a text throughout the day to let me know that he did a great job in participating in the discussion for literature. Here on the slide, you can see that we have our seniors have accomplished an impressive amount of feats here, and you can look at that slide in your slide deck. But I want to talk to you about our special education program. We serve all students regardless of needs and have a special education program across a full continuum of services. And we are really committed to our special education students. This is our highest growing number of subpopulation students. We proactively look to inform families of students with disabilities to let them know that IDEA is an option for them. We have a video here that we'd like to share with you of one of our students named Mauricio, and we produced this video as part of our campaign to be able to let families know, families of students with disabilities know that IDEA is an option for them.
Lo que es increíble es que Mauricio quiere ir al college. Él dice, ya me voy a graduar, y dice, ya me voy a graduar y quiero ir al college.
We provide inclusion services for students, but in addition, for students with profound needs, we have a program called the RISE program at every one of our schools, and it provides intensive services for the needs that those students require.
So we know that entering the state and being successful requires time and resources. As I mentioned, we've met with folks throughout the state for the last 2 years. We're also really, really committed to launching our schools successfully on day one. To that end, we've already hired and have on staff 4 principals and residents. So these are individuals who are typically school leaders or on the lead team at a school who want to become a principal. These are the 4 individuals who we've hired to be principals and residents for Arkansas. So if you approve us, these are very likely the 4 individuals who will launch our schools. They started with IDEA earlier this month as residents at a high-performing school under the tutelage of a high-performing principal, and this year they'll be learning the ropes of how to launch and run a strong IDEA campus. It's a 2-year program, they're on full salary, and they will move back and launch these schools. So we are very committed to getting this done right, assuming we get our approvals from you all. So just to be clear about what we're asking for today, we're asking for permission to launch 2 campuses, one in Little Rock and one in North Little Rock, likely in the Pulaski County Special School District. Each of those campuses will grow to contain 2 schools that encompass K through 12. So our lower school we call an academy, that's K through 5. Our upper school we call a college prep, that's 6 through 12. So we're asking for permission to launch those 2 schools on one campus twice, once in Little Rock and once in North Little Rock. Under the 5-year term we're asking for, we will build out to K through 9 because we will be launching in 2023 with kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 6th grade only. So only 4 of those 12 grades are first year, and then we'll add 1 grade in the lower school one grade in the upper school each year until we're fully enrolled at K-12. And I'm happy to explain that during the Q&A period if you'd like more information. We also have been very diligent in developing a financial model that we know will work. We know in the financial sheet that we gave you, there are some assumptions around philanthropy. To date, we have $7 million worth of written or verbal pledges, and we have another $5 million that, per one of the letters of support you received, we have access to, provided we meet the very reachable conditions of that grant. We also have put some contingencies in place, which my colleague Jasmine, our VP of Treasury, can speak to in case we don't reach full enrollment, where we have ways to reduce our costs such that we'll still be able to operate our full program. IDEA also has a track record of closing the gap. If we do open under-enrolled, we're very good at filling those seats. So we're happy to take some questions on governance, but we wanted to make sure you could see our governance structure. To be clear, IDEA Arkansas is a 501c3 entity that will enter into a management agreement with an entity called IPS Enterprises, which is IDEA's out-of-state nonprofit. It's a separate entity as well. And that entity has an agreement with IDEA to make sure that everything that we do right is transferred to IDEA Arkansas. So there still will be an autonomous, independent governing board for IDEA Arkansas that enters into that management agreement for those services, which we've included in our application. So we wanted to show you, gosh, is the College Signing Day video not? Is our College Signing Day video on there? Okay, well, we wanted to show you all a video of what we're working towards, but IDEA ends the year with College Signing Day, which is a chance for all of our families and all of our students to come and celebrate the colleges they've been accepted into. So we wanted to show you all that video. You can see it online, but what it is it's a chance for all of our students from, I believe, 3rd grade up, and the families of students who are going off to college to come together. And the students have not told anyone, including their friends, where they're going to college. And it's this big reveal like you'd see on ESPN Signing Day, where they share with everyone where they're going. And it's extraordinarily emotional and important for our families, and it really builds this culture of college is the thing we're all working towards. And we're very excited to host that here in Little Rock, 7 years after we launch our first schools. So, if you are kind enough to provide us with authorization, we cordially invite you to this 2030 College Signing Day that we do plan to host. So that's our presentation. We are very happy to take questions at this point. I'd also invite Dolores and Jasmine to chime in. I know they couldn't present, but to answer questions as they do come in. Oh, okay, and if it would be helpful, thank you. We have just a sample schedule to give you a sense of what my colleague Lisa just walked through with her 6th grade son. So just a sense of how our students spend the day. So every morning they do start the day with breakfast. We have a social emotional skill building period in their homeroom, and from there they would launch into their academic day. So you can see a pretty significant number of minutes, almost 90 minutes of reading, and in some cases writing, a similar amount of time in math. As Lisa mentioned, every student receives science and social studies coursework, and we do save a not insignificant part of the day for some of our individualized learning to help students, most of whom come in behind on their reading level and on their math level, to catch up. And my colleague Dolores can certainly speak to the specifics of our program as you have them.
All right, well, thank you so much. We'll start with Ms. Hott. If you will come and get us started through the waiver process, and if y'all stick around, you'll have to answer questions for her.
No, it's okay. You can wait, but that's fine. Okay, so just a couple of things I would like to give them an opportunity to speak about to the panel. I have had several conversations with APSRC and IDEA since the final legal review was completed. Could you hear that, or you want me to repeat that?
I think I was good up to there.
Okay. So we have worked out a couple of things since then, but for the record and for the benefit of the panel, I would like them to discuss it. So the first thing is, I just want to clarify that today the application would be approving a K-9 for the 5-year allowable period, and then in renewal, it would be when they would add the additional grades. Second is, in the final application, one school district, local school district was Little Rock, and the other was listed as unknown. As they said in their presentation, it's probable that the second location will be in Pulaski County Special School District. That's how I completed the desegregation analysis, and we have discussed it, and they have confirmed that if they do move to a district that's not Pulaski County, they will come back and we will complete a second desegregation analysis based on the new district. Okay, I do want to give them an opportunity. I know that they had a really helpful slide about all of the different organizations that are working together, but just like yesterday with Premier, speaking about how the board meetings are publicized, how people have an opportunity to participate, and how the board action is transparent, I give them an opportunity to discuss that.
Thanks, Mary Claire. I'll speak to that for just a minute, and then I'm going to ask Joe Hoffer, who's our counsel, to address that as well. So you all have the slide in front of you at this point. We don't have it up on the screen, but we will hold public meetings in accordance with Arkansas law here, with all open meeting laws, and we will publicize those according to the law, the time and the location as required. Our Arkansas counsel, Marshall Ney, is here, and he'll make sure that we are complying with the law. Joe, do you want to just provide a brief overview of our governance structure and why it exists this way?
Certainly happy to do that. Thank you, everyone, and for your time and attention this morning. I'm Joe Hoffer. I'm IDEA's National Outside Counsel. I am licensed in Texas and in Arkansas, although we rely on Marshall Ney for Arkansas education law advice. We've developed a governance structure that is really what I call an enterprise model. It's designed to ensure that IDEA's schools are replicated with fidelity, with integrity, and that an IDEA school in Arkansas will look and act and get the educational outcomes and the college enrollments for students that we get in Texas, that we get in Louisiana, that we get in Florida, that we get in Arkansas and in Ohio and other states where we're operating. And I like it. It's kind of like baking a cake. If we start changing out the ingredients or using a different type of flour, or we decide we want a different frosting, or we don't cook at the right temperature, the cake may not come out the same every time. And so we've created a governance structure that from top to bottom and bottom to top, it's a two-way street, that the organizations hold themselves accountable and hold each other accountable to the mission of IDEA, which again is high educational outcomes and getting students into and through college. And this model is a governance model. It's also a financial compliance model. We've really beefed it up over the last year and a half, 2 years, to ensure we have strong internal controls, both in terms of governance and financials. And so that's why all the entities exist. The entities also exist to ensure that we don't have any conflicts of interest. There's lots of charter schools in the country that have conflict of interest, and even with IDEA, conflict of interest have come up. We've created this system so that we don't have conflicts of interest between the organizations. We don't have conflicts of interest between the people on the boards. We're not self-dealing. It's actually prohibited. The IDEA board and the IPS board have pushed down strong policies of internal controls, conflict of interest that are absolutely prohibited, so that we don't have any of those things. And we think that really helps us focus on the mission again, driving it back to the mission of IDEA. We have IDEA Texas is kind of, I call it the mothership. It's the first IDEA, it's the biggest IDEA, but it has created IPS Enterprises, a nonprofit that has an identical board to IDEA. It's the same people serving on that board. It's separate because Texas law doesn't allow management companies. So it's separate to act as the charter management organization for IDEA schools out of state. So in Louisiana, in Florida, in Ohio, and now in Arkansas, it will act as the management company, but it's not a for-profit, it's a nonprofit management company. There's no owners of it. The board is there and it's aligned for mission. IPS Enterprises will have a contract for services with IDEA Arkansas schools. That will be transparent, that will be vetted. You all will have the ability to look into it. It'll be vetted by counsel at arm's length. It'll be, and also the management fees for IDEA are in the range of 10%, where a lot of management organizations charge a much higher fee. IDEA is really looking at kind of a cost allocation model, cost recovery model, which I think is a very huge benefit, where some CMOs are looking at more 15 to 20% management fees. IDEA is looking to keep as much money in the classrooms as it can, but it has to cover its operations. By having that structure with ID and IPS tied together, it allows efficiency of back office and of all the common kind of backbone of what it takes to run a large school system. It's all there, aligned to the mission, where even HR is aligned, recruitment's aligned, payroll's aligned, benefits aligned, all of that. And then we have, over on the far right, we've got a yellow box of IPS, or Idea USA. I want to make sure that everyone understands what that entity is. Idea USA is a holding company. It doesn't engage in any financial transactions. It doesn't do business. It doesn't have any financial arrangements. It has 4 members who are volunteers. They're not compensated. They will never be compensated. They are made up of retired educators, philanthropists, financial advisors, 2 former IDEA board members. Their sole purpose is to hold all IDEA schools accountable to the mission, which again is getting kids into college and through college and high educational outcomes. We've created that system to ensure also not just common governance and a governance alignment throughout the national system, but also to kind of act as a safety valve to make sure that we don't have mission creep. And again, that's mission creep across all IDEA schools. So they're there to hold everyone accountable, to hold the IDEA National Board accountable by acting as advisors, to hold our other states accountable, to hold the management organization accountable, so that we don't have mission creep, which we've seen in other networks. We want to really hone this in and learn from what we've seen others do where they haven't had true replications of their model. So far, it's worked great. We've had really strong outcomes in replicating in the other states we've gone into. We're very confident that this will have the same achievement results for Arkansas.
Thanks, Joe.
So I think what he said was that the board meeting calendar and minutes will be posted on your website.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Everything's online.
Yes.
That's right.
That might have been a quarter answer for a nickel question, so apologies if that was a little lengthy.
And all of those are posted on our website for our other board as well, so you can see them right now if you choose to, www.indiapublicschools.org.
Thank you. Ms. Hyde?
Okay, so like we did yesterday, I'll just go through the different waiver topics. There is some cleanup that we'll need to address, and then there's a couple of things we'll just need to work through. So on their alternative learning environment waivers, no issues. On their board of director waivers, just for the record, there are an addition of 613, 612C, which deals with filling board vacancies. Changing 613 to include the entire statute. There's also a typo. It should be 613, 619D4. And then adding 613, 630, and 631, which deal with board elections. That is the cleanup for those sections. And then also, I wanted to give them an opportunity to discuss, so their staff will all be employed by IPS Enterprises, not by the local school. And that is something I think that's unique, so I'll give them an opportunity to discuss how that kind of works for you guys.
Thanks. So I note the reason that we do that, and I know it may be unusual in terms of what you've seen here. Two main reasons. One is it allows us, I showed you an image of the principals and residents before. We do have quite a bit of staff training that goes on before the region launches and before each additional campus launches. And to be clear, our hope is that we'll also be able to serve students in the northwest part of the state, where a number of families have reached out to us and asked us to open schools at this point. So, in opening these campuses and potentially future campuses, there will be staff who will be working on behalf of IDEA Arkansas in Louisiana, Texas, Florida, as they learn and prepare to open these schools. Having that structure allows us to very easily move staff, keep them under the same benefits plans, the same salary. If we don't have that, it becomes much more onerous. The other reason we're so fond of this structure is it gives us a lot more purchasing power when it comes to benefits and to negotiating. So we're able to offer much more competitive salaries and benefits, in part because we're doing it under a very large umbrella, as opposed to a very small one. So those are two of the major reasons that we prefer this structure.
So Mary Claire, I'm assuming you need affirmation on the changes?
They've already confirmed them for me. I just wanted to do it for the record. So We have had some conversations, like I said, since the information was uploaded to the agenda and provided to you. So to make sure that we have a clean record and everything gets entered correctly into My School Info and into the SFA system, I just want to make the notes for the record. Thank you. The next set of waivers has to do with Superintendent Licensure. There was a code section on there that didn't exist, so they have removed it at 614-619. The next is their teacher licensure and policy waivers. There are a little bit of cleanup and then a couple of things just to discuss here. So if you bear with me just for a second, I'm just gonna rush through the cleanup of the statutes. Delete 615-1005B5, which is about ALE programming. Delete 617-301, which is about permissive contracts. Delete 617-702. Change 617-705 to A2, which has to do with the daily rate of pay for professional development days. Change 617-2805, 7 and 8 to include the entire subchapter that has to do with tests and leads. And I know that Ms. Saraceni's had conversations with them about their tests and leads waiver, so I'll give everyone an opportunity to talk about that in just a second. 621-303 just to section B, and that has to do with providing money to teachers for classroom supplies. Removing 611-105, which is the powers and authority of the State Board of Education. Adding 613-1305, site-based decision making. 615-1402, 617-1504, and I think that is the cleanup. I will say they have added 615-1402, which is the annual performance report. They have since rescinded that waiver, so they will be monitored and have the exact same annual performance report as all of the other schools. They have changed 617-704 just to include section F1, which deals with tests and leads. And I'll give them an opportunity to talk about the waiving of tests and leads. We only have one other school district, which is Arkansas Arts Academy, that holds the waivers of tests and leads. We have some other school districts that waive components of it, but not the system as a whole. I will tell you that they will still be required to report summative ratings to the division, as that's part of our reporting to the feds as part of our ESSA plan. So they're not waiving that component, they're just waiving the, I guess, the system piece of it, and I'll let Ms. Saraceni and Idea tell you a little bit more about that.
Yes, and we did speak with CAP member Saraceni about this, I believe, last week. So IDEA has a teacher career pathway program that we've operated across our network for many years now, and it's a singular system we use across all of our schools, all of our regions, and it's really integral to how we train and coach and support and promote teachers. So that's the system that we're hoping to bring to Arkansas here. It's been very effective in keeping our highest performing teachers and in moving up new teachers, which is really what our system is built for. So we're asking for a waiver for this, not to, basically waive the need to do it. We're asking for permission to bring that system in. We did crosswalk our system with the test system at the request of your office, CAP member Saraceni, and you're certainly welcome to speak to that if you've had a chance to review that.
Yes, I have reviewed it, and so has my team, especially Andy Sullivan, which is over tests and leads for me, and it does crosswalk nicely. And even though we use Danielson, they rely heavily on Marzano, which are very closely related, and I know you know that, Ms. Kaufman. So we are okay with it in my division because it aligns so closely. And they realize they will have to still give their ratings every year, so we have no issue.
And the areas where I think we realized we needed to make compromises to be in compliance, like having 4 levels, we've agreed to all of that. So
Yes, so we're fine.
okay, thank you.
Talk a little bit about professional development. So you have a waivers from professional development. I realize, is that correct, Mary Claire? So I'm assuming, based on your model, that you have a real aggressive professional development plan to be able to implement what you've described. But we do have some Arkansas-specific professional development, like mandated reporter, training, things like that.
So I think yesterday, actually, we cleaned some of this
Okay.
up.
So I think the only two pieces of professional development that are being waived now are anything that has to do with tests and leads. They will still do all of their required professional development for Arkansas history, Tier 1, Tier 2, human trafficking, bullying, teen suicide. I know I'm forgetting one. Parental, family and community engagement. I should know that off the top of my head, but they will still comply with all of that. They'll still have their teachers meeting the annual requirements. It's just it won't be part of tests and leads, and they won't be receiving professional development credit for any tests and leads training. Perfect. And that leads into my last little cleanup, which is rather than waiving the entire set of rules governing professional development, it's just sections 5.02.1 and 9.01.2.7, which are just tests and leads pieces.
That makes sense.
Okay, the next group of waivers, if it's okay to move on, has to do with planning period, duty-free lunch, and non-instructional duties. There are no legal issues there. The next group is school start date, calendar, and attendance. They have rescinded their waivers of the attendance system. So if the e-school of entering attendance in an e-school, they will be using e-school to use for attendance. They have also rescinded the rules governing mandatory attendance because those were repealed in 2017. And they do have a waiver of the uniform start and end dates, but I will just clarify for the record, they're not waiving adopting a school calendar, and they're not waiving posting the school calendar on the website. They're just waiving the mandatory start date. Now, if you want them to provide you a little bit of information, because I know we've been having a lot of discussion about start date this year, so I'll let them kind of discuss the need for that.
Yes, we typically start our school year about 2 weeks prior to traditional school districts, and that gives us an opportunity to just ensure that we are able to onboard our students, get them ready for the culture of our school, and then we start our rigorous academics. And so we just like to have that additional time to just make sure that we are setting a really great learning environment to get started on instruction.
So does that mean that what does that mean, getting ready for instruction? Then do you start school when traditional schools start?
Well,
or
we
what
do
does
a
that
whole
mean?
week of just like really setting clear expectations, focusing on just ensuring students are aware of all of our core values and just our character education. And then on day 6, we go full into instruction.
Does this add to the number of days, total number of days for kids attending school?
We're not asking for a waiver of the 178 days, just to be clear. We'll comply with the requirements there and probably exceed it.
Okay. That week early, does it count as part of the 178 or is it an addition to?
It counts as part of it.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be clear.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, you're requesting to start school 2 weeks prior to the traditional start date each year. Is that correct?
Yes.
We are, but we are flexible on the start date if that's problematic. It's our preference, but it's not something that we absolutely have to do if for some reason the CAP panel finds that that's not in the best interest of the school.
Okay. Sonia?
So just for my clarity, so you're going to start 2 weeks earlier, but those 2 weeks are still going to be counted part of the 178, or is that going to be, so then
So I want
to end earlier? I'm just trying to.
we will exceed the 178 days of academic days, and we will offer this earlier start time to get students ready for those days. I'm sorry if that was unclear.
We would like to have the ability to that in addition to the traditional school calendar, and we would continue to engage and learn as to what that exact amount would be, but we'd like to have that capability to exceed the calendar.
I'm just trying to, because I thought somebody said that that was part of the 178, but.
It is part of the 178. So like I said, we focus on the culture and we get our kids started with syllabus and what they're going to learn and, you know, all of their materials, and just ensure that they are ready and successful for the start of a full launch into instruction, right? So we just get them, you know, immersed in everything that we do and ensure that they're ready and prepared, but they get their syllabus, they meet their teachers, they start, you know, just the beginnings of getting their interactive notebooks ready and all of that, just so that, I mean, so it is instruction, but it's, you know, it's allowing them to just be ready fully to start the beginning of the school.
Is it really more soft skills?
Yes. A lot of, yes.
Big introduction.
Yes, correct.
I can give an example. So
As a former
I have a
principal.
6 and 5-year-old who are at IDEA right now, and so when they came home from their first days of school, they said, what'd you do in school today? They said, well, we learned where everything was at school. We learned different rules in class. So did you start doing any math yet? No, we're supposed to do that on Thursday. So it was, you know, it was a process from that week, but they were at school. It was the same length of the school day. They met their teachers, they were there, and then the academics started a few days later for them.
And to be clear, I'm sorry, sir.
With the 2 weeks soft skills training that you just described, and then the academic starting at the end of the 2-week period, when you let school out at the end of the year, do you consider the 2-week soft skills in your year of schooling, or do you start on the academic schedule?
So to be clear, it's only 1 week of the sort of softer skills, and we have an extended school year by Arkansas standards. So we're still going to clear the 178 days of pure instructional time based on the number of days we're typically in school.
Okay, let me see if I can rephrase what I think I heard you say.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you're going to have 178 days of student-teacher interaction that will start at about the same time our traditional calendar or traditional school calendar starts. But you're asking for a waiver to allow you to have early days with students, 5 early days with students. Is that right?
Yes, although it's possible we would want to start 2 weeks early and extend the school year in addition. That's what we'll look at over the next year, I think, when we meet with families to see if that's a reasonable expectation. If not, we would begin about a week early.
Dr. Flowers had a question.
Just a thought here. One, the starting school early is a great model. There's a couple of higher ed institutions who actually bring in their freshman classes a week or 2 early just to get them acclimated to campus so they can find out where the classrooms are. So that whole model of bringing kids in I think is an excellent model. I'm not overly, as I listen to you, I'm not overly concerned now about the academic piece. Even if it was included in the 178, because your results are showing that you're still achieving what other schools are achieving, no matter how long the number of days are. Credo, I worked with Credo for a number of years out at Stanford from the research standpoint. They are really, really good. And if they say that you all are doing a great job on some things, because they just look at the hard data, then I'm really interested to see how you all would, you know, how this would just happen all together from an academic standpoint. A couple of points. I'm going to digress here just a little bit. On the number of days, are the teachers compensated accordingly? Or if you have them to go longer days, how does that work?
So we always work to be the highest paying, typically in the top 3 highest paying districts in an area. And we'll usually set our pay scale to be the highest paying districts, in part because we do expect so much of our teachers. So in that sense, yes, they are compensated accordingly. They'll also receive a stipend for some of the, like if they're new to IDEA teachers, for some of the pre-contract training that they have to attend.
Okay, one other quick question on that. By virtue of them being not being state employees, do y'all furnish the benefits such as the retirement plan? Because teachers now can participate in the Arkansas teacher retirement program.
Well, our teachers will actually be a part of the teacher retirement system. So we're fully planning to have them be a part of Arkansas TRS.
Oh, okay, good deal. All right, thank you.
Dr. Flowers.
Yes, so within that 2 weeks you talk about, so more or less the first week is going to be soft skills, and on day 6 is when instruction starts. So within the syllabus, the instruction will start on day 6, is that correct?
We start, I mean, at least going over the syllabus and being able to talk about, prepare them with their interactive notebooks and just getting them knowing the systems that they're going to use.
Okay.
So we do that also.
Are there any type of assessments that take place to see where they need to begin on day 6? Or where they
Yes,
are?
we do. We have I'm going to turn it over to Dolores so she can talk about it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I heard the question right. Or did you ask about assessments?
Yes, our beginning of year assessments.
Yes.
Yes. So at the beginning of every school year, we do a nationally normed reference assessment in reading and in math called Renaissance Star. And that gives us, some people use MAP and WEA. We used that for a little while, but we found that Ren Star was a better fit for us because it provided the reading levels that aligned to our accelerated reading program. And we do Ren Star 3 times a year. We do it at the beginning of the year, we do it at the middle of the year after kids come back from winter break, and then we do it at the end of the year. And we're tracking growth of students over the course of the year. But that is one that we do at the very beginning of the school year. The other assessments that we do are across courses, all of our courses that we have, and they're bi-weekly assessments. It's a short quiz every other Friday between 6 to 10 questions. And all of that goes into one system where we are able to analyze the data across region, school, grade level, teacher, all the way down to the student level. And then built in our curriculum, we have unit assessments that are built in about every 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the length of the unit, to see how kids mastered the content within that unit. And then twice a year, we have practice tests with a state assessment. We have one at semester, and then we have one typically about 5 to 6 weeks before the actual assessment, where that's giving teachers that data of what skills we need to really hone in on during review time. So that's just kind of an overview of our assessment structure for the year.
So I'm a former elementary teacher, so I get the value of setting procedures, getting all of that work done. It just sets the stage for a successful school year. I think the place I'm struggling is our legislators have been very adamant about a start date. And so I'm not opposed to giving a waiver of it. I'm just trying to understand why. If you were going long, if you're going to have school for a longer period of time, you want to end about the same time everyone else.
Right.
You're doing a year-round model. I'm just trying to figure out why starting 2 weeks earlier is, and I'm not saying there's a reason not to. I'm just trying to understand why that 2 weeks makes such a difference for your charter, for us to waive a law that our legislators feel strongly about.
And Madam Chair, can I tag team
Sure.
on that? Because your question is my question. And, in reading through this whole application, I was wondering, what is the secret sauce? Why are you all successful? I mean, very successful at what you do. Is this part of it? I mean, I didn't pick up on this at all, but is this 2 weeks part of that secret sauce? And do you do the 2 weeks? If I start as a kindergartner and end up as a high school senior, do I do my 2 weeks as a high school senior also?
Yeah, I think the simple premise here, and we will answer your question, sir, around the secret sauce, but the specific question on the calendar is that, Member Williams mentioned the Credo study of how we're adding days, but we also find it helpful to have additional days of instruction and additional days of launching the year, because many of our students do come in academically behind, and we know that we have only so many days to catch them up, and having a longer school year, even per the Credo study, if we're doing well with the time we have, is a part of our secret sauce, if you will, having that additional time with students. You know, our teachers are extremely hardworking and diligent, and having that extra time with them can help students who might come in 1, 2, or 3 grade levels behind as a 6th grader, or a student who comes to kindergarten not speaking any English. You know, these are extra days that can be very valuable.
And to directly answer your question, Madam Chair, we start early so we can end around the same time. We find that helps attendance more than if we ask students to stay a week or two past their sibling, at
That's
which
right.
point they're in all likelihood not going to. It's easier to bring them back and staunch summer learning than ask them to stay late.
I mean, that all makes sense to me. I think the place where I struggled as I was reading through here is it didn't say that you're proposing to have 188 days of student-teacher interaction. It said you would consider having a longer calendar, and so that was the part that makes us, I think, as we're reading through, makes us question.
Understood. I think the reason that we are not as firm is we're still 2 years out from launching, and we want to meet with the actual families that we would potentially serve this year when we're between 1 and 2 years out from launching, to understand what's a reasonable ask in terms of when they can start school. So if it's an additional week, we'll do an additional week. If it's an additional 2, we'll do an additional 2. So I think we're asking for that flexibility to have the ability to make a decision based on what we learn. If it's problematic, again, it's not something we want to hold up our charter. It's just, it is part of, to what Mr. Hopper said earlier, we try not to change the recipe when we don't have to, because it works.
Is that the same time that all of your other charters start?
It varies by region.
Yeah,
So
it varies by region, but within, we have 9 regions in existence right now, and they vary within a 2-week window of when they start.
We also look carefully at the calendar to determine what are some of the traditional days in San Antonio. There's a day, the Battle of the Flowers, so that's a day that students have off, and we want to pay attention to those different customs. So that means that they're starting a day earlier in San Antonio than maybe a different region because of that date. So we need to listen and learn and see what those different events are in each community.
Okay, I'm sure we'll come back and have more discussion about it. Let's go ahead and move forward, Ms. Hyatt.
The next group of waivers, gifted and talented, class size and teaching load. I have no remaining legal issues. On their principal waivers, just for the record, they have rescinded their request for 4C3 and 4C4, which has to do with reporting summative ratings of building level administrators to the division and of registering first-year building level administrators with the division so that they can receive mentoring. They have rescinded those, so they will abide by those requirements. The next group of waivers, if there aren't any questions on that, have to do with personnel policies. Again, just a little bit of cleanup here. They have rescinded their request for standard 3A1 and sections 3 and 6.02 of the website rules. They will post personnel policies on their websites. They just will not include all salary schedules. They will post teacher salary schedules, but not schedules for other positions. And they have confirmed they are aware that all salary information is public record and that they must provide it to the division or to any member of the public upon request. If there aren't any questions on that one, I'll move on.
Have you recognized, Madam Chair? Thank you. Trip Walter, Staff Attorney, APSRC. I just wanted to add one point of clarification to that. The reason for that waiver is not to avoid posting any salary or other information that's required. It's just that they have asked for waivers of the salary schedule and personnel policies, statutes, so they will post complete and full information. It just won't be in the same format as a school district would, because their personnel policies will be different and they will not have salary schedules per se, the usual step. So they will post their schedule and the benefit information for all employees as required.
The next set of waivers are for library media. There are no remaining legal issues, and there are no issues on minimum salaries for classified employees. So the next group of waivers has to do with guidance counselor and student services. And there's a little bit of cleanup and then some discussion on these waivers. So first, they have rescinded their request for a waiver from the nutrition rules, as it would have disqualified them from receiving child nutrition funding. So they will be meeting the requirements of those rules. They have also rescinded the request to waive 2C1, 2C2, and 2E2 dealing with student services in these standards. Just to point out for you, on their counselor waivers, they have requested a waiver of counselor licensure, the number of courses a counselor may teach, guidance counselor ratio, and all of those have been granted before, but they have also requested a waiver of 618-2004A, which is the provision that states that sufficient time at each public school shall be allotted for the school counselor to carry out the duties stated in the comprehensive school counseling plan. I believe this is not a request to waive the 90-10, but more a request to waive having a school counselor at every school. So as they discussed in their presentation, they'll open 4 schools at 2 campuses in the same year. So I think their request is limited. I'll give them an opportunity to talk about it in just a second. But they will need to add a waiver of 4E3 in the standards to effectuate that piece if they decide to move forward with it. So I think because that is a waiver that's not been granted before, and because that was part of the the School Counseling Improvement Act of 2019, I would like to give them an opportunity to discuss with the panel that piece of the waiver request and the other counseling pieces.
Which standard did you say they were adding for?
They would need to add, they have not requested it, but they would need to add 4E3, which has to do, which is the standard piece that matches 618-2004A. What?
Apologies if we
No,
missed
no,
that.
it's okay.
So just to explain how our counseling is structured, why we're making these requests. And again, this is what we've done elsewhere. If this is problematic for the CAP members, we're very open to amending this to fit what you feel needs to be done. So we're asking for a waiver, a few different waivers. One is, as I mentioned, and as you see towards the end of your packet, when we open, we launch with K1, 2, and 6 on a campus. Typically, we have 1 guidance counselor at that campus that year. The next year, we have 2. We split, and we have a counselor, a school counselor for the lower grades, K1, 2, 3, and for the upper grades, 6, 7. Our request for the waiver that Ms. Petty just mentioned is for that, is to allow us to do that, is to allow us to have 1 counselor for the campus, which functions almost as a school rather than a campus at that size, at only 4 grades. We're also asking for a waiver just for that first year of the 450 student, because a typical launching campus has between 440 and 460 students or so. So we're asking for that waiver because there's a slight chance we'll exceed 450 by a few students, only in that first year. So we're asking, in essence, for a 1-year waiver. Is there an additional component I need to address? Oh, I'm sorry, and additionally, we asked for a waiver, I believe in there you mentioned. There's a component we're asking for, so my understanding is our college counselors need to be counted as school counselors per this law. We're seeking that waiver solely for our college counselors because, as Lisa mentioned, our college counselors teach a program called Road to and Through College, which my colleague Dolores Gonzalez is happy to elaborate on if you'd like. So they teach that course as the college counselor, and therefore it may be teaching more than 3 courses daily. So these aren't our school counselors, these are our college counselors. We're seeking the waiver so that they can continue to teach that Road to and Through College course, which again, if you'd like to learn more about it to know how they'd be spending their time, Dolores is happy to go over that.
Trip Walter, APSRC. I just wanted to clarify that that same piece of statute in Act 190 that contains the 1 counselor per school also indicates allotting time for the counselor to sufficiently implement the comprehensive school counseling plan. That is not part of the waiver request, trying to avoid the implementation of any part of this comprehensive school counseling plan.
So, let me ask a quick question here on LEA numbers. Are you proposing, and would you not propose an LEA number in the beginning for just the 2 campuses? Or are you proposing to have an LEA number for IDEA as a district and then list the 2 campuses?
Yeah, I think the latter, we would have a LEA for the district, and then we would list the 2 campuses.
And then as the 2 campuses expand, we may break them into a district, 2 campuses at Little Rock, 2 campuses at North Little Rock, where it would in essence grow to 4.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand your question, ma'am. When you say LEA number, you mean an individualized number for each campus and one for for all of the schools in Arkansas?
Yes, so we have a local education agency number
Right.
for each school and each district, and the organization of that determines a lot. It determines our ratios. Some of our ratios are by district, some of our ratios are by school. And so if you go the district route and then you have 2 campuses, Little Rock and North Little Rock, I believe, weren't they? You can always come back in and expand those 2 schools into, when they're fully staffed, you could turn them into 4 schools.
That's right.
So, yes, ma'am. So we will have one, and Marshall, Joe, please feel free to jump in. Our plan is to have 1 LEA for IDEA Arkansas. I think our hope is that we would launch with 4 listed schools. If there's some benefit to us launching with 2 campuses, we have done that in the past, but we operate them as individual schools. Yeah. Joe, Marshall, is there anything you'd like to add to that, just or if we misspoken in any way?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Yeah, you'll just need to decide if you want to launch as 2 schools or 4 schools. If you're going to go over 450 students for counseling, you'll still need that ratio waiver.
Yeah, we would prefer the latter, the 4 schools
Yeah.
approach.
Okay.
In which case we would need the waiver. Yeah.
Yeah.
The request that you're making, is this consistent throughout your system in other states?
Yes.
How does that work? I mean, I guess it works well, or you wouldn't be proposing it, but it is different for us to consider. So,
Dolores, do you want to talk a little bit about our counseling, just how we do counseling at IDEA? I think it's worth giving an overview.
Yes, so we have school counselors, 1 per school right now, and they spend their day, we have a list called the mission list, and those are students that teachers identify as needing some type of counseling or at risk in some type of way. And then counselors do small group counseling in cases where it is more private. They do one-on-one counseling. And then they also do lessons school-wide, but by class or grade level, depending on the school, of our social emotional curriculum, which is called Move This World. So they lead all of those lessons with students. So they're proactive in the sense that they're teaching those lessons with Move This World. And then they're proactive / reactive, depending on the situation, by doing counseling for students during the school day, both small group and one-on-one. And they're really a liaison to our families. They do a lot of connections with parents. And then, when we're launching the new school year, they're responsible for being a part of the new family onboarding team, where we have parent meetings for new families that go through and understand the IDEA experience, what's expected of students, and are that go-to for new families and parents.
And do you mind just elaborating on the college counseling model as well, Dolores, since that's also included in some of these waivers?
Sure. So when students get to high school, like Dan mentioned, we've got college counselors. We still have a school counselor that does the social emotional pieces. So the college counselors really focus on preparing kids for college starting. with a class freshman year every year through senior year. Some of the things that they do in Road to and through college is help shepherd every student through the college application process, starting with researching colleges and universities that students might want to go to. That's a really good match and fit for them, so they're ready to apply junior year for those 6 required applications like Lisa talked about earlier. They do soft skills training and teaching of study skills, how you should become an exceptional college student, join clubs, universities, just things that we want to prepare our students for so they don't have that culture shock when they get to college. And right now, we're also embedding some ACT prep starting sophomore year, and some campuses are doing it as early as freshman year, so students are able to get the highest possible score on ACT when they apply to those tier 1, tier 2 universities. The last thing I'll say is in middle school, we're starting to do monthly or quarterly Road to and through college seminars to get middle school students ready for that college going culture a little bit earlier than high school year. So that's how they spend their time teaching kids, but they also have one-on-one family meetings and student family meetings to talk about financial planning, how to apply for scholarships. So just kind of everything that you can imagine to shepherd students through the college application process.
The college counselors are in addition to the required school counselors, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
But we are seeking the waiver because they need to be able to teach more than 3 courses, and they are included under the same regulations.
Go ahead.
I just tried to, so you have the 1 school counselor, and then how many of the college coaches will you have that will offset so that you will be able to better manage that ratio?
It depends by year, but go ahead.
Yeah, in 9th grade, we start with our first college counselor, and we build up to 3 total by 11th grade. So we'll have a total of 4 counselors at the high school level, which are grades 6 through 12.
So you'll have the school counselor, then you'll have 3 of the college counselors.
And one of those school college counselors is called the Director of College Counseling, and they oversee all of those college counselors.
I'd also note we're planning to have a social worker as well, eventually at each school. So I know that's not included under the same regulation, but just FYI.
Yeah, I think our waivers will adjust, saying you're approved when you come back for renewal, because you'll be at a further along stage and have more of the grades implemented.
Correct.
So
And
it'll adjust.
As I mentioned, Madam Chair, one of these or 2 of these are actually just 1-year waivers. I don't know if you only issue them for a year or if they last for 5, but we only, we'll go on the record and say we only need it for a year.
That's awesome.
I do think that conversation brought up an additional question for me about enrollment cap. So the enrollment cap that's listed on the application for their first year, K2 and 6, is listed as 1,000 students. So I guess I'm wondering, is that 1,000 students, both campuses included, so 500 at each campus, or is that 1,000 students per campus?
Can you repeat that? So the first year cap, you're saying?
Sure. So in the application, and I can't remember, I think it's like page 5 or 6, there's a chart that lists the rollout of grades and the rollout of enrollment cap. So they're going to have a planning year, so the first year is blank. The second year is their K2 and 6, list an enrollment cap of 1,000 students. So is that a district-wide enrollment cap that would include all 4 schools at 1,000 students, or does that mean one campus in Little Rock would have 500 students for both of their schools, and one campus in Pulaski County would have 500 students for both of their schools, or will both have 1,000 students, making the district enrollment cap actually 2,000?
No,
It's the latter, where each school would have about 450 kids in K2, K1 and 2 and 6th grade. So a total, we're asking for the entire district is 1,000.
So just to correct what you said, each campus would have 450 kids.
Yeah.
So we really will have about 900 students across the entire IDEA LEA, the entire district that first year. We ask for 1,000 just in case, there's, wild popularity to join and we feel like we're able to accommodate.
So, to recap, approximately 500 per campus
Yes, ma'am.
for a district total of 1,000. And Mary Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, but if 1,000 students apply, they have to take 1,000 students in their open enrollment. Is that correct? They can't set arbitrary limits under the 1,000.
That's correct. So schools must enroll up to their enrollment cap, provided that students apply by the deadline. Now, if students apply after the deadline, and I think that date is like July 30th, where students have to notify if they're coming, they are not required to accept students after that, but they are required to have a policy about whether they accept students or not. So if their policy says we'll continue to accept on a rolling basis, they must. If it doesn't, they're not required to. It's a local decision.
Dan, is that what you understood?
To be completely honest, it is not what I understood, but I think we
have about 120 students in a grade level, and so across 4 grade levels on a campus, that's 480 students. So if we were to add 5 more students in each grade level, or 6 in one and 4 in another, we think that we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, I guess the issue is, and this is Jasmine, Vice President of Treasury for IDEA. I guess an issue is if say we have 1,000 students apply, but we get oversubscribed in 6th grade and undersubscribed in another. So would we be required to open up extra sections in a particular grade under the Arkansas law, or because 1,000 students have applied? Like, I just want to understand those mechanics a little bit better, because that has to do with our model and the way that we staff.
Ms. Hyatt?
Sorry.
So there's no provision in Arkansas law that allows for selective enrollment based on grade. So if 1,000 students showed up and all wanted to enroll in kindergarten and 0 students wanted to enroll in 1st and 2nd grade, you have to accept students on a first come, first served basis, and then based on a lottery. And our lottery process in Arkansas does not allow for weighted lottery based on grade. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Yes.
If you want to specify an enrollment cap per grade, you can do that. And that, I think, ties you more to open spaces per grade. Schools in the past have not liked to do that, because they like to have the flexibility to enroll more per grade or less per grade based on community interest. That's certainly something that they can do. We have done that in the past with Southeast Arkansas Prep when we transferred them to Friendship Aspire Pine Bluff. We put very strict enrollment caps on 10th, 11th, and 12th grade to ensure that they were only going to continue those students that were already enrolled there. That's just, it's not typical, but absolutely allowable.
Well, and it's just for you to decide, how to protect your organization, so that if you're trying to grow your grade levels, you may not want 1,000 kindergartners to start.
That would be a very rough way to start. To anybody who knows who's been around kindergartners, I think we'll leave it at 1,000 for the time being. If we need to make any amendments, we'll come back and seek those from you at a later time.
Okay, that's good. All right, Ms. Hyatt, I think we're down to number 14, grading curriculum and credit hours.
Okay, so we're good moving forward with 618-2004A. I just want to make sure before I move on. Okay, so the next group is grading curriculum and credit hours. Just
Okay,
a couple of,
back up, because you made me second guess.
sorry, I
Go
didn't
back.
intend to.
Am I good with,
That is a requirement to have a school counselor at every school. So because they're gonna have 4 schools, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, they'll have 1 school counselor for 2 schools and one school counselor for 2 schools at each campus for 1 year. And then the next year, they will have a counselor at each school. So we would be waiving the requirement, not the 90-10, so they still have to have that 90% of time engaged in direct student services. But we would allow them the opportunity to essentially share a counselor between 2 schools for 1 year.
Just so I'm clear, so the following year when there is a counselor at each school, is that a counselor or is that a college coach?
A counselor, a school counselor. And so this waiver, because on the record it has been asked for only 1 year, and in the stuff that they have presented has only been 1 year, it will expire at the end of 1 year, and that's how it will be entered into My School Info and read into the SFA system. Correct. Okay, sorry I backtracked us a little bit, but I'll move forward to grading curriculum and credit hours. Just for the record, they have agreed to rescind their waiver of the Right to Read Act, which has to do with the science of reading. I did want to give them an opportunity to discuss their waiver of the 38 required courses for 9-12 curriculum. So they will only be a K9 in their first years into renewal. They have asked for a waiver of the 38, and usually we give that waiver when schools are rolling out of high school or when they are a dropout recovery program like Premier or Graduate Arkansas. So just give them an opportunity to discuss their plans for that.
Thanks. And Dolores, I'll ask you to speak to this in just a minute. So we're seeking this waiver. To be very clear, we'll meet the 22 required credits for students to graduate. We're asking for a little bit of flexibility on the 38, which frankly we don't need for this 5-year period. We're seeking it from you because Dolores and her team have a lot of planning to do over the next year as they'll work to build backwards from 12th graders who get into great schools, pass APs, et cetera. We're trying to get a sense from y'all now whether or not CAP would be open to us having the ability to deviate slightly from the 38 courses. The reason we ask for that is we do have a very tight AP for all model. We offer quite a few AP courses at our school, and based on that, it's possible we might be 1 credit shy or 1 credit over in some of the categories as they're laid out. So we're asking for the waiver to have the flexibility, in essence, to implement our AP for all model without having to make too many changes. And Dolores can speak to that as you have questions.
Can you give us an example of those courses that may or may not make it into your offerings or that are going to go off the 38? I'm trying to get a sense of what courses are not going to be available.
So for example, in the career preparation bucket, it's possible some of our AP courses will count such that we'll have no problem clearing the, I believe it's 9 credits, if I remember correctly, 9. It's possible that based on that school, they may be 1 credit short because of the APs they offer. So they're at 8 credits, for example. We want to have the flexibility to be able to put the courses in that our students are requesting and that we feel they need to be prepared for college, rather than have to swap rather than swap out for a different AP course to meet the the prescribed category numbers.
So it sounds like it's the career focus courses that you're trying to
Well, it could vary by year, so we're trying to provide ourselves a little bit of flexibility. Again, this is for just that first year we have a high school within this 5-year window. So, for example, if in our high school courses, which is in your packet, you can see, I think for the high school it shows in 9th grade, we offer AP World Geography is the very first AP course that our students take. So that would be a course that we want to make sure every single student is taking. In addition to that, we may want some flexibility in that 9th grade year for students that might need intervention or are caught up.
Just to be clear, Sam, we don't actually need this waiver we don't need it until we're fully enrolled.
That's right.
So we won't need it in 9th grade. But to respond to your question, we do offer a number of career-oriented courses. I think we want to have the flexibility to offer career-oriented courses and have the ability, like I think we will offer, I'm confident we'll get to almost all credits. I don't know if based on the particular APs we'd hit all 9 is in essence why we're asking for this. It might be the same with the performing arts credit as well.
Just a follow-up question. If you have time to work this out, why don't we go with the 38? And if you all can build a better mousetrap, then you come back and specifically put your courses, and ADA staff can then review it and determine whether it's appropriate or not.
We could do that, Cap Member Williams. We can come back and work with Dolores's team and with your team on CTE related courses and others to figure that out if that's what the committee would prefer.
I like that.
Yeah, we'd be very open to that.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling with giving up on the 38 when you don't have a better mousetrap yet. So.
I understand.
And I think the waiver that Ms. Houghton has gone over, I mean, we typically have charters that are growing grades. So we understand you can't offer the full 38 when you only have a 9th grade.
That's right.
So we get that. I think the concern then is making sure down the road when you come back, as Dr. Williams said, with the better mousetrap, we're just concerned that kids have every opportunity available to them. So we want to make sure we haven't limited someone's passion for learning. So that's where we're always trying to keep an eye on that.
Okay.
But I
In the
think we're
spirit of your
very,
question,
I think
yours-
we're very comfortable with your plan for getting to 9th grade. We've done that several times before.
Then I think for the record, we can rescind that waiver request for the waiver of the 38, and we'll come back and we'll work with you, Cap Member, and we'll work with anybody else who'd like to figure out what might be the solution.
So, Mary Claire, but they'll need the 38 for the 9th grade, right? Is that correct?
Well, to me, it's a little unclear because it's just whether our SFA system picks up on it or not. I don't think the expectation is that if you have only a 9th grade that you're offering the full 38. I think it's clear from the standards that's when you have a 9-12.
Yeah.
I don't think our SFA system picks up on it, but a lot of times schools do request it just to be exceptionally clear. So I would have absolutely no issue with giving it for that 5th year where they have added the 9th grade so that it's exceptionally clear.
Yes.
Okay. And
So let's have their confirmation on that.
Yes, then I'll go back on the record and say we would like that waiver. Thank you.
I think that's smart.
okay, also on this group of waivers, just a little bit of cleanup regarding the rules governing instructional materials. They have rescinded sections 5.04 and 5.05. 5.04 is that materials be consistent with the Arkansas academic standards. So all of their instructional materials will be consistent with Arkansas academic standards. And section 5.05 had to do with monitoring of instructional materials, which they will comply with. The sections that they will continue to waive are 5.01 and 5.01.2, which have to do with instructional materials selection committees. The next group of waivers
Before we leave.
Sure, absolutely.
So I noticed in the heading, and I went back and looked at that section again about grading and credit hours. And I just want to make sure that they'll be entering the same credit hours and grade system into eSchool.
So they are using eSchool and they will be using the same grading scale because they've not requested a waiver. They have requested a waiver of standard 1A2, which is that course high school units of credit must be awarded for courses that meet at least 120 clock hours. So if they're offering high school credit in 8th grade or in 9th grade, they may be doing it based on courses that meet less than 120 clock hours. The next couple of, or the last 3 really, facilities, transportation, and PE, I have no remaining legal concerns on any of those. And if there are no additional questions from me, I think that's it.
So I have a note here about recess.
So they will be meeting the recess requirements. They are not seeking to waive recess.
All right, great job. Let's start with questions. Dr. Williams, do you want to kick us off?
Actually, more of a statement than anything. I mean, the waiver discussion was really covered just about anything and everything I could think of. One thing that stood out for me on the presentation was just the fact, being a former math teacher, I love the high school math offerings. It's really a college prep, so that's just really my only comment. No other questions, because I covered all of mine during the discussion of the waivers.
Representative Hodges, do you have questions?
I don't at this time. I would echo the same thing. I think any questions I have were covered in the waiver section. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Wright McMurray, questions?
And just more informational just for me. You shared some really good information, and thank you again for your presentation and answering all of our questions during the waiver section. So you have 100% of your students that are accepted into college, and I noticed from your documents that 2018 is kind of when you started working with these schools.
Was that a question or?
So what I'm asking is, what I'm asking is, do you have any persistence rates that you can share with us of those students that have left you, gone on to post-secondary? How are they doing in that first or second year after going through this model?
Yeah, so we have certainly worked at this as our students have gone off to college, and we have a college success team that we'll be having work with our students here in Arkansas. This means that after students leave IDEA and graduate, this team is working closely with them in college. To answer your question, we're at about a 50% college graduation rate from our most recent class, 6-year graduation rate for those students once they are in college. And depending on the sources that you're looking at, that's about 4x the national average for students coming from a low-income background. But the college success team is really integral for those students. We believe deeply that it's important that our students don't feel that they're going to college alone. And we recognize that for some of our students, particularly our students who are the first in their generation to get to college, that they need immediate additional supports or assistance that our school district can provide. So in some instances, that's a text message that they might get from a member of the college success team. Have you registered for coursework? Or do you know where all your classes are? In some instances, we actually have a team member who goes to that campus to assist a student, make sure they're set up for success. And we keep in touch with our students throughout their college careers.
And then my other question kind of gets back to, we started on a little bit ago talking about some of our career options for students that come through this model. So we get a student, gets to their senior year, and for some reason they decide that they want to, say, do an apprenticeship or something different. Are there supports in place for that student to be able to do those pieces, or if right after graduation, if they're not going to go directly to a 2 or 4 year, what happens to that kid or that student?
Yeah, I'll take this, and Lisa, if you want to jump in. So we're very unapologetic about our focus on college for all of our students, and we work closely with families really from the day they come in kindergarten, or if they enter as a 6th grader at our college prep, that this is our focus as a school. It's a big part of the culture on campus. When you talk to our sophomores or juniors, they'll talk about their ACT score, what schools they're looking at, what schools they're visiting, and so it's a deep part of who we are. And so it is a focus, and our seniors are on that track. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but if you were to visit one of our schools, that's what you would see, that's what you would hear in the hallways and the classrooms.
I think I would add, just to be clear, we don't remove support for students. We encourage every student and support them to apply to 6 colleges and to go to their best fit. We have a number of students who go to technical schools, and we continue to support them through our college success team. It's not as though we don't support them. We just want them to know they have a number of options and to make the best choice. And we feel for most of them, not all of them, it's going to be to attend the ideally the tier 1 or 2 school that they got into and were able to negotiate their best financial aid package.
Last question. And looking at the course offerings you had a few courses in there that would be considered some of our CTE courses. And in your language in your application, you mentioned that, that's kind of guided by student interest and, your expertise of your faculty and your campus. Can you just share a little bit about how are you identifying which courses you're going to offer? Is there an assessment that you guys provide?
Yes, Dolores, do you mind addressing CAP member Wright's question about career preparation?
Yes. So I'll take this a step back for a second just to let you know how we decide the actual course sequence. So the curriculum team, we will have 4 curriculum managers for Arkansas because we know that we can't just plug and play what we're doing in Texas or Louisiana or Florida into Arkansas. So we will be following all the requirements. And in the year 0, so leading up to the launch year, we will, and we have been actually setting the standards, the assessments, and developing the course sequence. It's helpful for us to plan all the way through 12th grade, even though we're only going to launch with K1, 2, and 6th grade. We need to have the end in mind to know where we're going to end up in order to plan really well for launch year. So in that process, there are electives that we say each school will have X amount of electives, which might be career preparation courses. It might be fine arts courses, it might be computer science courses, and that's where we work with the region, the executive director, on, is there a focus that you want for this particular school? Is there something that the students are interested for sophomore elective, junior year elective, senior year elective? And we go through that process once we have students, once we have teachers, once we have more of an interest. So the electives are there as, I wouldn't say placeholders, but they're there initially with what we think we'll need to do and happen. And then once we have more students there and more interest, we then really decide what those courses are. So that's just the process that we go through in order to get to electives or career preparation or STEM or whatever that focus is for that campus.
Dolores, do you mind just explaining some of the career offerings that we do have?
Yes. So, we've got a handful of schools in Texas that are STEM designation schools that offer, multiple computer science, engineering courses, and more complex math. So Mr. Williams, I think you would be excited to see that school because they do some good upper level math courses there. We have a school that is focused on health professions in Austin. So they've got a lot of medical elective courses. So that's kind of their track that they do. And then we've got a couple of schools that are really heavy on the fine arts, whether that be music or art, across Texas. And then in Louisiana, we have a couple of schools really interested in the computer science track. So, we really want to listen to our students, our families, our staff at those schools, and really develop, the interest of students that align to the courses they want to go to.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Ms. Saraceni?
Thank you for your great presentation, and you've answered my concerns, so I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Flowers?
Thank you.
Mr. Baldwin?
It has to be fun going from state to state and fitting what you do into the rules of the state. And I think we all appreciate the discussion we had today and your flexibility to fit into Arkansas. The only question I have, and I think you've done a great job of answering all of our questions, but I did note in your application that you focus on on-site learning, and with the world right now, and I know you're not starting a school right now, but you have schools out there. Do you do any digital off-site learning, or is it just all on-site?
Yeah. Do you want Dolores to answer that? How would you like to?
Yeah, currently we do have all of our learning on site. We do provide opportunities. Right now we are working with the state of Texas to actually do some remote learning opportunities for students that might be sick or are in quarantine, but that's part of, you know, the COVID situation. But right now we deeply feel like the best learning environment is for students in person, because the teachers will be able to work with them one-on-one and be able to progress monitor what they're doing, identify those gaps in their work so much easier and better. And so our philosophy is we should be in person.
May I add one thing, Mr. Baldwin? We are doing a pilot and getting a lot of, not a lot, but some feedback from our Texas schools, parents, families around dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment, which would take some students off site to go to a college or university that is nearby. We're doing a pilot this year to learn about that with one school in Texas. That might be a possibility moving forward once we have high school students, if we find a high quality university or college partner.
Thank you.
Like my colleagues, I had a long list of questions, and I think you've answered every one of them except school start date. I'm still stuck on how I justify starting 2 weeks earlier than our legislators have laid out. If I were wrapping my mind around it and saying, oh, you're going 2 weeks longer, I could wrap my mind around it. But with the open-endedness of how many days the school year would be, knowing that, you know, as you get closer to start date, you can always come back and amend, but to waive that up front without something attached to why. And I get all of the setup. Traditional classrooms do that as well. They do it on the first day of school. And I agree, on the front, not on the back end of the calendar. I get all that. I just need to have something to attach to why 2 weeks earlier than is in legislation.
What would you like us to produce for you, Chair? Because we can certainly work something up to your liking. I don't know that we can do it in real time now, so I would just ask your guidance on how to proceed.
I would be more encouraged if maybe you considered it and came back and added it later as an amendment when you're closer to actually starting school. I would feel better about it then, and we'll have a new law in place that will start next year that gives more flexibility as well.
Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Mayor Claire? I have a beautiful attorney to do that.
I believe the act number is 688, and it was Representative Lowry's alternative calendar bill. So it will allow schools, rather than doing 178 days of instruction that are an average of 6 hours per day or 30 hours per week, to meet a certain number of hours per year, and they have a lot of flexibility on how that will look per day. It does come with some restrictions, though, about, I'll have to double check, but there is a lot of flexibility built into that. Each version of it, whether you'll do the 178 days or do the 1,000+ hours, have their own pros and cons and restrictions, but it does offer another opportunity for schools. And I believe that that's going to be codified at 610-106, but I can double check that, obviously.
Thank you. I think with that in mind, Madam Chair, we can rescind that waiver and come back to you with a plan if the law that passes does not allow for us to do what we want to do.
Thank you. I just think it makes it cleaner, and like I said, you know, I'm not opposed to it. I just need to have something to justify.
Okay.
Panel members, any other discussion? We've come to that time. I will accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request with the waiver changes that we've agreed to.
Second.
Was that Dr. Williams? I have a motion by Mr. Baldwin and a second by Dr. Williams to approve IDEA Public School charter application as discussed at length today. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
So if you will wait just a second, part of the Arkansas model is that all of our charter panel members have to write into a voting sheet that is then presented to our state board at the next state board meeting. And at the next state board meeting, the state board will either vote to review your application or not review. And if it's not reviewed, then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. And we'll follow up with more information on the 38 courses and the schedule.
Sure.
For your recommendation. Thank you all very much. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
Thank
So if
you.
you'll wait just a moment, we'll hear from each panel member.
it. Okay,
Great job, guys.
thank you.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes, I vote to approve the application. This is a strong and innovative program that will advance student learning.
Mr. Hodges?
Sorry, I'm working up my comments now. You want to circle back to me?
Representative Hodges, we were in our recording sheet, we were just asking you to give your feedback to IDEA about why you voted for the charter.
Yeah, I'm voting to approve the application. I think they're going to be a valuable addition to the Little Rock and North Little Rock area. I think it looks like a strong, well thought out program. I think it's got a really strong offering to students, and I don't see any issues or concerns from my vantage point. So I look forward to seeing them get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams?
Yes, support the motion. Ideal establishing 2 campuses will allow students and parents additional college preparatory options.
Thank you. Dr. Flowers?
I vote to approve. This is a program very impressive and rigorous academics that will station at a high impact on student learning.
Ms. Wright McMurray?
I voted for. I support the motion. The IDEA model has the potential to prepare more underserved students for college readiness and increase their opportunities for persistence and completion.
Thank you. Ms. Saraceni?
Support the approval of IDEA's expansion into Arkansas. Their track record speaks for itself. Looking forward to the impact on students in our state.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to a new opportunity for our students.
Thank you very much.
All right. Shall we take about a 12-minute break, and our next applicant will be here at 11? Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, let's call our meeting back to order. Ms. Hyatt, we have new members in our audience, so if you'll come up and go over our procedures, please.
Mary Claire Hyatt, ADE Legal. You'll want to swear anyone in who's not an attorney that plans to testify or answer questions during the presentation. Following that, they'll have 20 minutes to present their application. Nobody has signed up or presented any opposition to the application, so you may then go into any additional time at the discretion of the chair. Following, we'll address any remaining legal concerns, feedback from the internal review committee, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and have additional discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston?
I forgot to say one thing. If when you come up to the podium or if you're on the Zoom and you plan to speak, if you will just state your name for the record and where you're from so that our court reporter can get it down for the record. Thank you.
Tim Johnston, DESE Charter Unit. Next on the agenda is application for an open enrollment charter school submitted by Arkansas Military and First Responders Academy. Beginning with the 22-23 academic year, the charter will follow a college preparatory educational model with a military academy and first responder concentration. And Mr. Paul Vallis is here, and he will introduce anyone else that is going to be presenting with him.
Thank you. If all parties that are speaking on behalf of the Arkansas Military and First Responders Academy would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And if you'll state your name again.
Yes, Paul Vallis. Okay, great.
Right. Just a second, and you'll have 20 minutes.
Okay. No. Okay, I just want to make sure I have my clicker right. Good. Okay. Oh, okay, sorry about that. All right, very good. Hi. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I'm joined by Don Hall. Donald is a former assistant superintendent, a longtime education veteran who I've worked with for a number of years. Also, Michael Bacalus, I don't know if he's on yet. He's former undersecretary of education during the Carter administration, also a former state superintendent in Chicago, Illinois, another colleague of mine who I've worked with over the years. And of course, I'm Paul Vallis. I've been a big city school superintendent for the last 20 years, Chicago, New Orleans after Katrina, Philadelphia, as well as Bridgeport, Connecticut. And so our charter proposal is to create a military first responders academy. I opened the first military first responders academy in Chicago at the historic Brownsville Armory, and since in 1997 I have opened 11. Now let me point out that 10 of those 11 academies are actually traditional schools, but they are traditional schools with the full latitude that is normally afforded charters, because the unions have always made major accommodations with the military academy models. The one in New Orleans, the New Orleans Military Maritime Academy, is in fact a charter school. But we have opened 11. They are all fully functional, all open today, all outperforming the generals, open enrollment high schools. In fact, a number of them are among the top ranking schools. The NOMA school, for example, is among the top 3 top performing non-select enrollment schools in New Orleans. If there's common features in the New Orleans military academies, is all of them are over 80% minority, all of them are over 80% low income, and all of them have both their test scores and graduation rates far above the state averages and very consistent with some of the higher national average performing schools. We think that this model fits very comfortably with the needs and the Little Rock area where we've proposed the creation of the charters. Also, I don't think there is one military academy that has fewer than 80% of the children in free and reduced lunch. So I think it consistently meets a need in the community. I think it would be an ideal match. The school's vision and our mission is not only to prepare students for college, but also to prepare students for education to careers, because the Military and First Responder Academy model does focus on introducing students to a variety of first responder areas: police, fire, EMT, nursing, aviation, drone operated, which is a huge and growing industry, EMS, etc. So the objective here is not only to ensure that these students are college ready, but also to ensure that these students have been introduced to various professions and have had experience working with these first responder categories throughout the 4 years that they're at the high school. The game plan, or the overall, we accomplish that mission by really developing and introducing students and exposing them to a very rigorous and innovative curriculum, by developing leadership skills, by strengthening their self-esteem, by teaching them on how to work collectively, by promoting citizenship and physical and healthy lifestyles. The whole military environment is conducive to that type of character development. The key components of the models: this is a 9 to 12 school. It'll be phased in over 4 years. The maximum enrollment capacity is 800. My military academies have ranged in size from schools within schools of about 300 students to large schools of about 1,000 students. Actually, the one in New Orleans now exceeds 1,000 students because they've established a 7th and 8th grade program. As the model does introduce students to a very rigorous college preparatory curriculum. The curriculum itself is oriented towards engineering and having the type of course requirements that in effect you would find in kind of pre-engineering programs, and with a heavy focus on coding. We want the students to not only graduate prepared for college, but we'd like them to at least have secured a minimum level coding entry level status. So the objective here is to give them skills that will make them employable the minute they leave high school, although our intent is to ensure that all the students are on a college track. There's a special concentration on ROTC. It's basically ROTC all day, or I should say ROTC 5 days a week. The students are in uniform. It's a very structured environment, and they are introduced beginning fully in their sophomore year to a first responders curriculum, and they get to pick the first responders area. So it's really first responders electives. And these are not only offered during the school day, but what they are also given an opportunity to do is to get involved in first responder internships with our first responder partners. It's a traditional high school in terms of the extracurricular activities and the co-curricular learning opportunities. So it's a traditional high school, and it has those traditional things that would normally be characteristic of most high schools. One of the things that we do is, because we structure the curriculum to put a heavy emphasis on introducing students to the first responder areas, and they can kind of pick and choose which area they want to focus on, and they can obviously switch that focus too. We really supplement the curriculum with what we call extracurricular clubs. So a lot of the things that might have been offered as electives are actually offered as elective clubs. It gives us the vehicle to kind of like extend the day and to provide expanded opportunities for the students. The key components of the military models: it's a military type organization. There is a chain of command. Actually, the students have an opportunity to work through the chain of command. So the students have an opportunity to take on leadership positions. The leadership positions rotate. So every single week there's a new leader, like a new class leader. So it's all about teaching the students leadership skills and to get them involved. As you rise through as you go from grade to grade, you assume a higher level of leadership command. So it's a very, very structured. It's a very, very structured system. Our partners include the police department, we have fire department, the emergency medical services, the med tech institutions. We have already reached out to all of them, and we've already had meetings with a number of them already, and obviously we have follow-up meetings scheduled too. So we're very optimistic that we're going to be able to establish the type of partnerships that will provide that will provide students with not only those type of first responder experiences, but actually provide those organizations, whether it's police or fire or EMT, with potential a conduit for recruiting to a diversified workforce and a highly skilled workforce from day one. Again, the candidates participate in first responder training and internships. They do wear they are in uniform. They are in uniform 5 days a week, and they participate in daily ROTC training and activities, formations, the raising of the flag in the morning, the lower of the flag in the afternoon. It's all those traditional things. There is a summer boot camp, and it's not like a summer boot camp. It's a summer orientation camp, but the students, but that camp will allow students who are interested in the academy to, in effect, be exposed to what the academy might be like over the summer prior to enrollment. So they have the opportunity to opt out. Historically, we have far more applicants than we have slots for. The parents really gravitate toward this type of environment for their kids. And we rarely have students who participate in the boot camp elect to opt out after the boot camp, but we do give those students the opportunity to do an orientation. The key components of our learning model is each student has a personalized learning plan. I believe in progressive learning. I believe that students learn at different paces, so we have to adjust our curriculum instructional approaches to accommodate. Every teacher has a secondary MOS, as they call it in the military. They have a secondary responsibility. Every teacher, and that responsibility is counseling. Every teacher will counsel a group of kids from their freshman year all the way through their senior year. Although we will have a counselor that we will hire to coordinate the counseling activities. And of course, in addition to academic RTI, academic interventions, we develop and I've used over the years a behavioral RTI model, which allows teachers to determine, and the schools to determine the appropriate response on certain behavioral issues. So you know how to intervene, you know what supportive services are needed to be provided. Sue Gam, who is a consultant on this project and has served as the head of numerous consent decrees, including Chicago and New York, has worked with me over the years since my Chicago days on both academic RTI and behavioral RTI. So she's an expert, and she's one of the individuals who will provide us with the guidance not only on special education issues, but also behavioral issues to accommodate. We will exceed, we will not only meet, but we will exceed all of Arkansas state academic requirements. We think they're rigorous. We think they are very consistent with what we hope to have in terms of creating the right rigorous academic environment in the schools. And so I can answer more questions if you have on this issue. All of my instructional days from my years in Chicago all the way through New Orleans has been longer, and my instructional year has been longer than what is required by the state. And it may be one of the reasons why I've never had a school district that did not have significant improvement in test scores. And in Philadelphia, the test scores in reading doubled, the math scores almost tripled, charter and non-charter schools alike. In New Orleans, the recovery school district led the state in academic improvement for 7 consecutive years. And it wasn't because I was a genius, it was because the kids were had 34% more instructional time than what was mandated by the state. So our instructional day will be rigorous and it will be longer. There's no more effective gap closing approach than having an extended school day and extended school year. Instructional time on task does make a difference. Our core instructional methodologies, again, will standards-based instruction and assessment using state and national models. I think some of these things are self-explanatory. We'll have writing across the curriculum. Obviously, the science of reading will include the Arkansas RISE program. Again, very rigorous curriculum, very rigorous core instructional methodologies. Student support services. We will meet, obviously, all the special education requirements. I mentioned that we do take a behavioral RTI approach to dealing with issues of student discipline, particularly because it really equips the teachers to be able to differentiate when it comes to determining how to deal with individual students that, who are perhaps have behavioral issues or have perhaps family issues that need to be addressed, and it allows us to provide the appropriate supports. And we will have gifted and talented. Our approach in academic RTI is to have behavioral RTI. So to have what we call accelerated RTI. In all of my districts, we would have 3 tiers for the students that were struggling, and then the tier for the students that won't. So there's never any idle time. So students who are moving at an accelerated pace will have opportunities to participate in additional enrichment programs that will move them forward. Our library media center will be directed by, or will be run by a digital literacy specialist. Our approach here is really to turn the library media center into not only a student resource center, but a resource center for the faculty as well as a resource center for the parents. The administration is, our program superintendent is Don, who has extensive experience. He's certified, he's a PhD. He will in effect he will oversee the Military Academy High School. We do hire a commandant. Our schools are actually run by a commandant. We have always recruited somebody with extensive military experience. Once you've normally at the colonel level, the full colonel level or above, anyone who's reached that level of military rank in the military has had extensive experience in managing large organizations. And if anyone knows the military, particularly during peacetime, 80% of the time you spend in peacetime is training, redundant training. I mean, I used to get gigged on my training schedules, and the soldiers' 201 files are in fact 80% training documentation files. So the objective here is to take that same approach. We will have a chief academic officer who will in fact drive instruction and obviously train, monitor the teachers, etc., where the commandant will focus on the management of the facility, the budget, the finance, the discipline, etc., the counseling, and then every grade has an ROTC officer assigned. The military will provide you with ROTC subsidies, so you can hire veterans to come in to be ROTC officers. So every class, freshman class, sophomore class, junior class, senior class, we each have a ROTC officer that will be dedicated to the class. Because we'll be phasing into school 1 year at a time, obviously we'll be hiring one additional ROTC officer a year. We will, as I mentioned, have a full-time guidance counselor, but everybody in that school, all the teachers, will have specific counseling responsibilities, and they will begin to work with a set group of students in their freshman year, and they will follow them through their senior year. There are some very, very good and very, very effective models for doing that. We'll also have a full-time nurse, although we will seek to partner with either a local healthcare clinic or a local medical institution so that we can be able to secure additional services. My approach in many of my school districts has always been to work with the local hospital to set up a healthcare center in the hospitals, particularly given the population we serve. Those healthcare centers become, self-financing because obviously for Medicaid eligibility. And I've always had success doing that. So we've already begun to reach out to potential medical partners. So we'll have a nurse, but hopefully we'll also have a student healthcare center that could actually be operated. And that center can not only serve the students, but it could also serve the students' family members if need be. Again, our instructional staff, fully licensed teachers in the specific curriculum areas. Our special education teachers will be fully licensed, will be very consistent with the state requirement. Same thing with our learning intervention specialists and their digital literacy specialists. Site selection, our proposed academy would be located within the boundaries of Pulaski County's special school district. We're initiating discussions with them. We actually have a meeting with them on Thursday, and we've already had ongoing discussions with the 2 military bases in the area to determine whether or not we could house a military academy on a military base. They're very procedural, and one of the military bases is undergoing a chain of command. We already met with the commander, the outgoing commander, and we're going to be setting up a meeting with his successor. But we have time to work, to work out an arrangement. Our preference, again, would be to locate the military academy on a military base, although that's not a prerequisite. Only with the only two of the 11 military academies I have opened have been located or have occupied military installations. So by and large, we can use a conventional school or obviously renovate a building as is appropriate. So we don't anticipate a problem, but we're certainly going to continue to have our conversations with the military base. We'd like to have, obviously, develop a working relationship, and our initial discussions have been positive. We will bring in an external partner to help us on the financial side, on the facility side, particularly facility partnerships. There's an organization called School Improvement Partners, or School Support Partners, out of Philadelphia, who I've worked with in the past. They've financed the opening or the construction of 30 charter schools, and they actually do charter school evaluation and assessment for investors in charter organizations. A lot of investors in charter management organizations will ask them to come in and to do kind of an assessment and evaluation of the viability of the charters, the quality of their programs, et cetera. So we hope to use them as an external partner so that we can have a constant independent evaluation of how the schools are performing, not only academically, but also operationally and financially. And I'll be more than happy to provide you with background information on the really excellent work that they have done over the years. So they will be helping us. In terms of governance and accountability, we will assemble a 7-member local school board. I've always been obsessed with local control. In Chicago, all of my schools had local school councils. In Philadelphia, I created local school councils for all the schools. Of course, in New Orleans, where all the schools are independent charter schools, with the exception of the select enrollment magnet schools, which are still traditional schools, they all have local charter governing boards. So this idea of the community taking ownership and guiding the schools and navigating and assessing and evaluating on their own is critically important. And our approach, and this 7-member board could become a 9-member board depending on the willingness of our external partners, particularly our first responder partners, to identify somebody who would be willing to serve on the board. Because in the ideal world, we would like to have each of our external partners represented on the board. So somebody from the police department, somebody from EMS, somebody from the fire department, et cetera. So we would have representation so everybody feels that they have the proper governance. As I mentioned, we will be partnering with an external evaluator to come in and independently assess and evaluate our schools, and a partner that does this for a living. So they have an obligation to get it right and to not sugarcoat it. And we'll also seek a partnership with secondary institutions. Just to give you an example, in Philadelphia, we partnered with 32 different colleges and universities. Every year, we had close to 1,000 student teachers actually working in our schools every semester. It eliminated our recruitment and retention problems and challenges because we had so many student teachers who were already exposed to the schools. So when they decided to come to the schools, there was no learning curve. We went from an attrition rate of first-year teachers of 25% to 5% within 2 years. So we will be seeking a university partner so that we could recruit our future teachers, and we could partner with the university's other colleges of nursing, the other colleges, so that we can secure internships. We can get graduate students, undergraduate students to come in and to work in our schools to provide support. In terms of stakeholder and family engagements, we'll have our local school board meetings. All of my, or I should say the overwhelming vast majority of my schools all have a designated a classroom in the school that we convert into a school-based parent community center. So it becomes a parent resource center where parents can come together, they can access information, et cetera. In the ideal world, if you also have a school-based health clinic that provides certain advantages, parents will be able to access our library. So the objective here is to have a parent presence and a continual parent presence in our schools. As I mentioned, each of the schools will have each of the students will have a personalized learning plan, and that in itself provides a vehicle for engagement. And in this digital age where, post-COVID, where hopefully the number of families who are connected to their schools via the internet, via social media, et cetera. Our ability to constantly communicate with parents, particularly on the personalized learning plans, has been significantly enhanced. We'll have our quarterly parent-teacher meetings. We'll have our regular academy town forums, and we'll do periodic surveys to gauge how students, or how the students and how the parents are viewing the academy. So I think I came in under the gun 20 minutes. So I appreciate this. These academies have been extraordinarily successful, and one of the things that has been most impressive about these schools is their retention rate. There's a lot of charter schools that talk about 95, 98% graduation rates and things like that, but then if you look at the number of students who remain in those schools, sometimes that doesn't always hold true. And I don't need to cite or need to point out where there have been some discrepancies over the years, but the bottom line is these schools keep their students. When the students enter as freshmen, they stay. There is not a huge exodus, not a significant exodus whatsoever. And parents want to gravitate toward these schools because they are academically rigorous, because they're character building, and they want to gravitate toward these schools because they're extremely safe and secure environments in this day and age, which is also important. I also think, look, I'm the father of 2 police officers and 1 firefighter. My wife was a police officer. There's 6 veterans in our family. There's also 2 teachers in our family, 3 if you count me. So we have interesting debates around the holidays. But at the end of the day, these type of rigorous academic environments that really create a character building, give students a really high quality character building experience, I think is what is in demand now. We intend to partner with local elementary schools in the area to create these, or to sponsor these, what we call first responder clubs. You know, I'm old enough to remember being a patrol boy many, many, many moons ago, prior to some of you being born, and to a certain extent, when we were in Bridgeport, for example, we had these first responder programs where students could come in and they learn CPR and all those type of things. So it's all a part of creating a pipeline. So we're going to look to reach out to the schools in the area to provide an opportunity for the students to get exposed to the high school at a very young age. We think that'll be a positive thing. The second thing is we will partner with any high schools that have ROTC programs. In Chicago, while I had 7 military academies, I had 42 ROTC programs, and we had 10,000 kids in ROTC, and 87% of those students were Black or Latino, 46% of those students were women. And it was an extraordinary display on, like, Veterans Day, when they were marching down State Street. You would have looked like it was VE Day after, you know, the European theater war ended. There were so many ROTC units. But it was an extraordinary experience, and the kids really gravitate. The kids who get involved in these programs do far better than the kids who do not. So it's a great opportunity for us not only to serve the needs of the community by providing students with a really high quality educational and what I call learn and earn opportunity for students, but it also gives us an opportunity to help the local first responder institutions recruit the next generation of police officers and firefighters, etc., from the communities that they serve. And I think that's an extraordinary opportunity. So I want to thank you for this time, and be open for any comments. I might ask Don to call me too, to come up and join me too.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ms. Hyatt, if you will come and review waivers with us.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just a couple of things to get through for this one. First, they do have a plan for providing transportation, but it's not in line with all of the traditional ways of providing transportation. So they have added Arkansas Code 619-101 et sec, which is the portions of the code that deal with transportation. And I did want to give them an opportunity, like I have with the other 2 schools, to talk about how they will publicize meetings, how often their board will meet, how parents have the opportunity to participate and learn about those meetings.
And
again, I want to personally thank you for the opportunity of being here. As a veteran career educator of over 30 years, I get excited when I see programs that are about students, and not only about them, but actually result in actual student achievement, especially for the most disadvantaged in our communities.
Before you go on, would you state your name and title?
I am so sorry. Thank
That's
you,
all right.
Chairperson. My name is Dr. Don Hall, and I am from Lexington, Kentucky currently, but based on this program and the actions that come out of it, I very well, if this is approved, I would be moving to Little Rock. So, was that all you needed? I will be the superintendent for this program also. In addition, so as to answer the question about, my mind just went blank.
Board meetings.
Board meetings.
Yes, so typically in Arkansas board meetings, there's a schedule posted on your website.
Yes, yes.
You're going to announce your meetings, and then
Right.
your board minutes are recorded and posted on your website for public viewing.
I have worked in 5 different school districts in 5 different states. And so you'll find that pretty much when it comes to public records and public access to information, as well as public access to your governing board, it's comparable in most states, very little variance. And so we would follow very much the requirements that Arkansas has in place. They will have monthly board meetings. In addition, those will be published in the newspaper, print, as well as online on the school website. And we will also be producing that as part of our ongoing communication through packets we send home with the students to the parents, so that they have the ability to see that. Because that doesn't necessarily mean they're always going to be conscious of that. So we want to keep them engaged and aware. So it's up to us to continue those touch points with our parent community. Those will be public meetings. They will be recorded. We will allow time in each one of them. There will be a formal community input section in the meeting where they can come and address the school board and share concerns, comments, or hopefully even some positive stories. And we want to make sure that that is open to all the recordings will be archived. The minutes will be taken, posted on our website so that anyone can access it later. We will also have those archived as well. So again, we'll follow not only the Arkansas statutes, but quite frankly, what's considered best practice in school governance.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Their first group of waivers for administration, I have no legal concerns. Same with their alternative learning environment waivers. On their class size and teaching load waivers, I did just want to point out.
Hang on. So on our attached document, on the legal review, you had some legal comments on administration. Those have all been resolved?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
About the superintendent mentoring program, yes. So we had some discussion, and then when Dr. Hall discussed waiving the superintendent mentoring program, because number one, he has worked in schools before and will be receiving more charter specific training through APSRC, that was a sufficient rationale for that waiver.
Thank you.
On class size and teaching load, I did just want to confirm that the class size and teaching load waivers would only be used for non-core courses. They have confirmed that. I just wanted to make the panel aware. I have no issues on gifted and talented. On the instructional structure, they again are asking for a waiver of the 38 units. They have confirmed that this is just during their rollout, so they'll be in 9-12 until such time that they have all 4 grades. They'll utilize the waiver. Once they're in 9-12, they'll offer the full 38. I have no concerns on library media or minimum salaries. I did want to point out that they have confirmed that they will be posting salary schedules and personnel policies to the website. They'll just be in a different form, and those schedules might not necessarily match the schedules that are listed in law. I had no concerns on personnel or school board waivers. They are asking for a waiver of school start date. I do want to give you a little bit of information about this. So I do believe their academic school year will start on the traditional school start date. They do, as they discussed in their presentation, have a boot camp or kind of orientation program during the summer that's mandatory for students. And because it's part of their school calendar and occurs before the first day of school, I do believe that waiver is necessary. But I do think the first day of instruction begins on the traditional first day of school.
So I have a question about that. So in the presentation, Mr. Vallis said that during the summer boot camp, students might decide this is not for them. Then I'm assuming because the selection has been made, the lottery has been done prior to that timeline, right? Is that right?
So typically lotteries happen in the spring. So for a first year charter, they would begin enrolling. Once they hit their enrollment cap, they would do a lottery for the remaining students. The law says that students must make a decision about where they're coming in July. And then typically what will happen is if a student drops out before that deadline, they'll start going down any waiting list. After that deadline, every charter school is required to have a policy about how they accept students after that deadline. Some charters have decided we don't accept students after that deadline because we've already done our planning. Other charter schools accept all year round if they have available spots.
Thank you. I just need to get the timeline in my head.
Absolutely. I have no concerns, no legal concerns on their personnel policy, teacher fair dismissal, or teacher licensure waivers. And if there are no other questions for me, that clears everything up on my end.
No questions, Ms. Wright McMurray? Okay. All right. Well, let's see if our panel does have questions. So we'll start with you, Ms. Wright McMurray.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. I really enjoyed hearing about other models in other states and what your plans are here. Just a couple of questions.
I'm not sure they can hear you, Sonia.
Oh, sorry, just a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, in looking at, JROTC, first responder courses, those are all things that fall under, in our state, CTE. So I was just wondering, have you had conversations about any of our state staff or team about how those programs or courses will be implemented through this model?
Okay.
Yes, I've been having a lot of conversations with DESE, and I will say they've been very helpful to us. And so what we've learned is that the programs, the way they're going to be structured, one, have no conflict with CTE guidelines. And it doesn't require, that's part of why we went through the licensure piece as well, because these people that will be delivering some of the instruction clearly would not be considered traditional CTE instructors. So that's why we did request that particular waiver. But as far as how the instruction is done, it would be delivered in a comparable format to core curriculum. Does that answer your question? But we are coordinating with DESE on not just that aspect, but all the others as well.
Yeah. And I've met with Ross White when we were back here in May. We met with a number of state officials, including Ross, who were very enthusiastic about what we were doing and obviously provided us with some guidance, as Don has pointed out.
Thank you.
Ms. Saraceni?
What's your focus on the JORTC? Is it Army? I kept looking for it, and
that's
it's
a good
really
question.
not a concern. It's just, I was intrigued.
It'll be Army. It'll be Army. Okay. There are some academies there. We have a Naval Academy and an Air Force Academy. The Naval and Air Force are schools within schools, with the exception of Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is obviously close to the naval base. So, but for the most part, we actually have one Marine Corps program too. But by and large, they'll be Army.
Dr. Flowers?
Several questions clear in here. So, when your proposal you mentioned about superintendent and principal, it says
Yes.
Dr. Flowers, you'll move to your microphone.
I'm sorry. So
Yes.
is it the same person? Because in your presentation you say that your commandant is with the principal?
Yeah. Well, let me explain. Don is going to assume the superintendent's role. He's superintendent certified. He has all the requisite knowledge. We're only working with the one academy. The other academies I've opened over the years, incidentally, they're all up and running. They continue to thrive 20 years later. So I have no involvement in those. But as we might contemplate opening a second school down the road, Don will play that role. But right now he'll focus on this school exclusively. But the individual who runs the school on a day-to-day basis is the commandant. So he has responsibility for the budget, discipline, security, operations, the food services, the transportation, and the chief academic officer, who is the instructional leader, reports directly to him or her. His or her responsibility as the chief academic officer will be to focus exclusively on instruction, guiding the teachers, monitoring the teachers, training the teachers, etc. So that's the way the structure will work.
Teachers would report to them.
The teachers will report to the chief academic officer. Okay?
Mr. Baldwin?
How did you all find Little Rock?
I'm sorry, say again?
Your national program, how did you find Little Rock when you were looking for places?
I am not unfamiliar with Little Rock. I've worked with the Walton Family Foundation over the years, particularly in New Orleans, where they generously helped us out right after Katrina with our schools. And so actually over the years, when there have been academic issues in Little Rock from time to time, I've been asked to comment or opine or make recommendations and suggestions. So this isn't the first time I've been here, but obviously in terms of the district itself, it just faces many of the challenges that large urban districts experience. I'm of the belief that when you've been doing this as long as I have, you begin to develop some silver bullets. In other words, you begin to identify certain things that are game changers. And I think the degree to which school districts can embrace and expand educational choice, whether it's working with charter schools or for that matter, or sponsoring alternative programs, is always a very positive thing. I always viewed my charter schools and all my large districts as part of the district and not something separate. And in fact, the teachers unions were generally very supportive of my efforts to view charters in that way. I didn't view them as competition. I always felt that the more choices you have, the more enrollment you get, the system thrives. So I think, like any other system, embracing educational choice and expanding educational options, and they don't have to be just charter school options, they can be innovative options like this. Like, besides the military academy programs, my most successful programs in Philadelphia and in Philadelphia and Chicago were my international baccalaureate programs. I opened 18 international baccalaureate high schools, academies. They were schools within schools in traditional public schools. So anytime you're expanding those type of educational options, the district grows. When the district grows, everybody benefits. So that's from my experience. That, and as I've mentioned, the extended school day and school year is an absolute game changer. There's nothing magic. You don't double reading scores and math scores across the board. Actually, math scores almost tripled in Philadelphia if you're not providing 20-30% more instructional time on task. The same thing in New Orleans. It was no secret. I mean, New Orleans has very diversified school models, given the fact that it's pretty much a charter school district, and these are all neighborhood charter schools. So there's no, you serve that population in your individual community. They're just independent schools, but because they have that additional instructional time on task, it's absolutely a game changer. The third ingredient that I think is a game changer, and obviously that will not be involved in, is universal prenatal to the classroom. And so much of the brain development occurs during the first 3 years. If that's where the gap exists, it just doesn't begin to appear until the kids begin to test independently. And we had a program in Chicago. It wasn't a large program by Chicago's standpoint, but it was a large program by a smaller district standpoint. We had 2,500 kids in prenatal, identified pregnant teens, provide them with prenatal care, early literacy, early numeracy, etc. And when those kids hit third grade, and they were 99% low income, there was no achievement gap, and there was an 80% graduation rate among the parents or among the mothers, and there was virtually like a less than 1% repeat pregnancy. So it's those type of things that can make a difference. So I think there's a way, there's an avenue out, there's a pathway for districts to improve if they're expanding school choice, if they're doing early childhood education, but they begin during the critical prenatal to the class, to the prenatal to 3 years and not just wait till 4, and if they're increasing the instructional time on task. I think all three of those things are silver bullets, they're game changers, and unfortunately it took me a couple decades to figure that out, but what are you going to do?
One final question,
Yes.
and thank you for that. So one of the things that intrigues me about your program is the partnerships with the first responding organizations. How does that look from the student's perspective? So I'm a student. What does that partnership look like?
Well, our focus the freshman year is to do is to set the foundation. That means to make sure that all the students are academically at grade level, that they're comfortable with the environment, the discipline, all those things. And then beginning in the sophomore year, they begin to pick their first responder area. And this really allows us to put these children in a nurturing environment. Like what does that mean? That means the students will be participating, and what we do with the police and fire, et cetera, is we work with them to develop kind of a sequence of electives or training exercises or experiences that the kids can participate in. Knowing full well what they want to see in someone whom we eventually decide to pick this profession. So what we do at their sophomore, junior, and senior year, and what we do over the summer, will all in part be guided by what the fire department and what the police department are articulating. Like when we met with the fire chief from Little Rock, there's a law now that says 18-year-olds, you can become a firefighter at 18. Well, I don't think they're going to be hiring too many firefighters at 18, but if they graduate from our high school, they may very well do so. Although we'll want the kids to continue to get their, go to community college or work on their advanced degrees. But the objective here is to basically introduce them and place them with that first responder, because it really creates, if it accomplishes anything else, it puts these young people in a nurturing environment. And I always say that the best role models in the community are working men and women. And if we can have our kids working with the local hospital, working with at MIMS, the EMS programs, working with police and fire, et cetera, working at the airport, et cetera, you know what I mean? And spending time during the week and time during the summer, because our curriculum, our approach is to have summer activities for all the kids. In fact, we're designing our curriculum so beginning your junior year, you can participate in paid work study. So you can actually be in work study. You can actually have a work study job with the first responder partner, and you can get compensated for it to introduce students to the work world. So the idea is, no better environment to place those students in than working at the firehouse or doing their internship at the police department or working at the local hospital. So long story, long answer to a short question, sorry.
If I might add just a little on that. By sophomore year, they begin exploratory activities. So we partner with the team in their freshman year, and we've created, by the time they become sophomores, we create the curriculum with our first responder partners. And so when the students matriculate up to 10th grade, then their curriculum's waiting for them. While they're in their sophomore year, we then partner to create the junior curriculum. And then the same thing happens for the senior curriculum. So that's how we launch the program in a way that's manageable and relevant. The purpose of the sophomore curriculum is to expose them to a wide variety of first responder activities and experiences. Then by their junior year, they begin to narrow their focus based on what their interest was after their exploratory year. And then by the time they get to be a senior, they pretty much know the area they're really interested in. And that way, late junior, senior year, that's when you start looking at the internship programs, because they have made some decisions. By doing it in the junior year as internships, entry level, it lets them realize one of the things we know as parents, frankly, students may think they want to do something until they really try it. And then they go and have that internship experience. It's like, whoa, no way, I don't want to do this. That's okay. So then in their senior year, they can go and start looking at another option. So we want to give them a structured way to make decisions for themselves about what they want to learn and how they want to learn. So that's the way it's created, the curriculum, and that's the way it's articulated so our students can progress through it.
Ms. Wright McMurray.
So, listening to that explanation, that blends another question. So, the courses that are offered that are in line with first responder, drones, and all those pieces, is that curriculum that you guys are creating in partnership with outside entities, or are you using courses that are already been developed, say, by a curriculum education?
No, we will develop it with the outside agencies. Now, you know, we have model courses because this has been done before, but the fire departments, for example, the fire department has certain requirements for becoming a firefighter, and what they'll do is they'll design activities that in effect will help prepare students for a life in the fire sciences, especially on police, in terms of a whole host of activities. We had a conversation with the sheriff from Pulaski County, and so he talked about, first of all, he talked about the severe shortages that he has just recruiting people in the Department of Corrections, and he's already thinking about a series of activities and training opportunities for students, and in fact internships where they could come in at age 18 and actually begin working or doing a paid internship or actually getting kind of an entry-level job in those initial years. And then once they reached an appropriate age, they could actually have an opportunity to become a county sheriff. But it's important. We have a framework. We have a framework for each of these first responder areas. You know, the drone programs are more contained. There's only a certain way in the aviation professions to become to become certified to operate a drone. But our goal is to provide them with the models that we've used elsewhere, and then to work with them to develop the sequence of courses and summer activities that we're going to want the kids to be involved in that will accommodate our first responder partners. Okay. Did I?
It does. I would just encourage you to just kind of chat with our team in CTE.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the courses that you're speaking of are programs of study that are within our division, and I think it would be a great asset to the students to be able to participate and be able to become concentrators and have those connections. They're not taking out the business and industry partners, because we do a lot of that.
Very good.
Preparing that, but I just would encourage you to have those conversations.
Yeah, that will be great. Well, you know, once we're approved, we plan on sitting down with them, and if there are courses or curriculums out there that is indigenous to the state already, we will use that. The only point that I'm going to make is because we want the sheriff and if it's the sheriff, or for that matter, the local fire chief, et cetera, because we want them to hire to these students and at first to give them internship opportunities. We're going to give them the opportunity to kind of weigh in and to basically provide whatever supplemental instructional services or experiences that they deem most needed. But absolutely, we're definitely not going to reinvent the wheel here if we have to.
Yes, I think we love community engagement. Dr. Williams?
Yes, this is interesting to me. A year out of high school, I completed the PLC program, Platoon Leader Corps program for the United States Marine Corps, and later got a commission as an infantry officer to the ROTC program. I spent 14 years as an infantry officer in the reserve and on and off active duty. So I appreciate what's happening. A couple of questions. One, what military installations have you had conversations with in the state of Arkansas?
Little Rock Air Force Base and Camp Robinson.
Okay, those are two I have listed here also. I'm assuming that I did not hear a waiver requested on the 38 hours. It would be interesting to see. I wish you all were a little further along in actually integrating the first responders and the military pieces into the curriculum itself. It would have been great to, you know, kind of have a look in to see actually how that would work. Because in some cases, it's not enough hours in the day to do all what you want to do from a military perspective, and then make sure you complete the 38 hours along with also the various opportunities with the first responders. So there's work to be done, and I just want to acknowledge that that piece there. I just made a note of how would you all integrate all that into the curriculum, and I guess that is yet to be determined.
Actually, we do have a program of study. It was not requested as part of the submission piece, and that's because we're doing it a couple things at the same time. As Paul indicated, we already have the 11 models that we'll be borrowing from their curriculum framework because it's been used for over a decade. But what we try to do is we take existing frameworks that we've used and then we refine it. So we're constantly looking at what's the need in the community we're going into and what are some best practices from that have evolved since the last established academy. And so we will take that foundation framework that Paul was referencing, and then we refine it. And so we'll be adding new pieces to it, and that's where the localization comes in, and I think that's what you were getting to.
No, but Dr. Williams, I understand your point. There may be opportunities for us to integrate some of the first responder activities into the core curriculum. You're absolutely right. The curriculum's organic, and because we're doing this 1 year at a time, we're going to make adjustments. You know, so there is time to begin to integrate. There's no reason why over time, you know, many of the core courses can't have first responder related activities, particularly in the area of mathematics or even in the sciences. You know, particularly if your first responder area is like nursing and things like that. So you're absolutely right. But this is going to be an organic process. Suffice to say, we've got, our team knows how to do that because we've done that in different districts. But you're absolutely right. I want to point out, though, that I've always been a believer in almost keeping schools open till 8 o'clock at night and having year-round school. I just am. And in part in Chicago, it was as much a need to keep kids safe and secure as well as to provide for their other needs, particularly when you have a district with 84% poverty rate, and district at the time with 440,000 kids. So we are looking at a robust summer program to get the kids occupied. You know, not to get, and the reason that we're excited about the work-study model, because the Crystal Ray, it's a Jesuit-founded school. There's now 34 Crystal Ray schools across the country. They have work-study, and they've had phenomenal success with inner-city children, just phenomenal graduation rates. They don't have kids leaving a Crystal Ray school. And one of the key elements is obviously not only that environment, that character-building environment, is the fact that the kids are working. You know, I was fortunate. My dad was an accountant, so from 8th grade, he always found me a job. And sometimes you have to learn the work, or you have to you have to appreciate work. So we're looking at having a robust summer program to not only help students who are struggling academically, but also to give students things to do over the summer. And you know, I couldn't think of a better summer 3 or 4 week summer program than to have a junior spending time doing an internship at the local police department or at the fire camp. In Philadelphia, the fire department actually set up a little 3-week program for students at the local fire academy that the students could participate in. So we're going to take full advantage of, we think kids need to be more engaged. We need to provide more time for them. We need to get them we need to engage them in more activities to keep them fully engaged in safe and secure environments. So we're going to do whatever needs to be done to basically meet our needs.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Hodges.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, just a couple questions. Dr. Williams kind of touched on one of them that I have. I know you said you're in discussions with some military locations. I figured Camp Robinson was one of them. You said Little Rock Air Force Base. Just out of curiosity, if you've done something like that in other states, how does that typically work if you're able to get that done? Are you just renting or leasing facilities that are there, or are you constructing your own, or just interested in how that works?
Well, in Chicago, we actually purchased the Brownsville Armory, which was it was the first military installation ever built for black soldiers. And so we actually purchased that building, and we converted it to a military academy. And later on, the Smithsonian gave us money to build an addition, so because it became a historic landmark. In New Orleans, we located the military, the NOMA, the New Orleans Military Maritime Academy, on the, it's called Federal City, and it's the Marine Corps compound. So, and we actually lease buildings. We lease buildings on the military base. One of the military bases is very active. One of the other military bases is not as active in terms of just resources and the number of soldiers and things like that. So they may have more flexible space. But I've always found military bases to be ideally suited for this type of model because the buildings are just, it's just the way the buildings are constructed. But we would lease the buildings from them. In the case of Brownsville, we bought the Armory. The Armory was in disrepair, so we just rebuilt the entire thing. But we'll enter into a long-term lease. The great thing about military bases, though, is you have all those other things. You have the parade grounds, the fields, and in the case of New Orleans Maritime Academy, they have the gymnasiums, the auditoriums. You know, it's just it's a military base. It's an active military base where people live and work. So we anticipate that it'll be a lease process. You know, that process is not going to occur overnight. The military is very chain of command oriented, but the response we've initially gotten has been enthusiastic, and so we're hopeful. That's our primary objective. We don't have to locate it on the military base, but if we can get it there, I think that will be a win-win for us. Okay.
Thank you. Only other thing, I think I know the answer, but just for my own clarification, you know, being a military academy, you don't have an official relationship with any of the armed service branches. Yeah, it's just that all of your students are required to be in the JROTC program.
Right. Well, we will seek ROTC certification, which we've never had difficulty getting. And if you look at the individuals who are on our advisory board, from Terry Ebert, who incidentally, his junior officers were General Mattis and General Kelly when he was when he had his brigade command, and Randy Thomas, General Thomas, and others. These individuals have extensive experience. They have relationships with the Pentagon. So we anticipate that we'll easily get our ROTC certification, and we hope that translates into one subsidized ROTC officer. They pick up half the cost for every single grade. And just through our connections, we were able to secure about $2 million in military equipment in New Orleans. Uniforms, boots, the whole 9 yards. Just a warehouse full of military equipment. So I'm not saying we're going to be as successful, but I'm optimistic. The military, for a number of years ago, were actually promoting these type of academies, and we're very supportive. So historically, the military has been very, very, very supportive of these type of initiatives. Also, Colonel Brady, Tom Brady, who's no relationship to the quarterback, he's the superintendent of the military, public schools on military bases. He was my COO in Philadelphia, and so he'll be very supportive too. So we think we'll get the ROTC designations, and then we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to access a lot of the equipment, the uniforms, the things that the military generally has in surplus, and that they're more than happy to dispense. So we're pretty optimistic.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
I have two easy questions, I think. First, let me start off by saying I've been on the charter panel for a long time, and I've read a lot of charter applications, and you have presented us with what I consider the easiest to read application I've ever read.
Thanks
so
for that.
Kudos to you. And I notice in here that you're planning to use legislative audit as your auditor.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
Very excited about that. Thank you for that. One of the things that Mr. Johnston will be following up with you, if you're approved, is to determine your LEA number if you're going to apply as a district with a school that down the road, if you're considering adding another, however that wants to work.
Very
But
good.
my final question is, you mentioned 27 graduation credits, and as the state, we require 22, and in our accountability system, that is a part of our accountability system. So we're looking to see, you know, did you, how have you coded a student as a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader? And we typically look at 5.5 credits
Okay.
for completion to be able to move on to a 10th grade. So I was just sitting here calculating yours, and so it looks like your freshman will need about 7 credits to move on to the 10th grade. Is that
That
kind
is
of
correct.
okay?
We have an 8-period day, actually. And, but it's not 8 courses a day, because we are building in a concentrated study reflection piece as part of the advisory process with the teachers, so that we can help support students that may not have gotten everything done they were supposed to when they go home. So they're doing that while the advisory teacher's meeting individually with the students before they launch their day. I'm a firm believer that if you can prop the students up for success before they actually even go into their first course, academic course, they're going to have a better day and be better prepared to achieve academically. So we're trying to look at that holistic approach, in addition to saying you're going to have more courses in general, but do it in a way that's still achievable.
So with basically 7 courses per day for credit for a student, then that's 28 courses available to them throughout their high school year, and you're requiring 27. So it says to me you're expecting everyone to meet passing expectations, and/or some support will be put into place to ensure that's happening.
That is correct. This is a highly rigorous program. But again, by the time you get to the junior and senior year, you don't have a lot of core curriculum pieces left. So you start to see more of the JROTC and first responder curriculum, and that's much more flexible in how it's designed. So that doesn't necessarily always have to be within the same instructional window as English, social studies, and so forth. So that's why, again, it's designed to give them enough structure so we can get them through, get them all through. That's our goal, quite frankly. And at the same time, allow that flexibility as they start to take greater ownership for their learning.
Panel members, any additional questions?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
What's our process from here? If we approve this, what's the next step? I have a concern. I want to see if I could, if there's a way along the process that can be addressed. I'd like to see more of the curriculum on paper, just to see if there's making some progress. There's enough questions for me that I'm not just, it's not as tight as I hoped it would be at this point in time. I know they have a lot of time to do some more work on it, which is great. But if we approve today, will we have an opportunity to have another look at it once they do some more work on it?
Ms. Hyatt?
So you have a couple of options. The first being, if you needed the information before you made a decision, you could table it until next month and bring it back next month with the required information. Otherwise, if you want to move forward with an approval, the panel has the flexibility to request them to come back before the panel at however many months before school opens, this time next year in the spring, whatever the will of the panel is, to provide that information before school opens. So the process from here on our end, Dr. Williams, is kind of, once it's approved, we walk through getting them set up with LEA numbers. We notify the facilities unit so they can begin working with them on buildings. But we don't necessarily bring them back in front of the panel for additional information unless it's requested, which is absolutely appropriate and at the will of the panel.
Okay. My thought process, I don't have a preference on which way we go about doing it, just as long as we have an opportunity to see the curriculum on paper.
Sure. If I may, a question, a clarifying question. The 3-page curriculum matrix that we provided, you want something more specific than that?
Yes, absolutely. How do you plan on integrating the first responders and at the same time making sure, as I listen, I saw that, and as I listened at the same time to your response to questions, I got to thinking about the 38 and the various, how you intend to integrate the various first responders organizations within the curriculum. I think it's great what you're doing. It's just sometimes the conversation didn't necessarily match up with what's on paper.
Okay. Well, let me, whatever the committee's comfortable with, we're more than willing to comply. But, the core courses that we're required to basically submit they're standard courses. There's not any cross-referencing or cross-coordination with the first responder activities per se. We carve out a part of that school day and a part of that school year for first responder activities, as I've articulated, using the electives, the extracurricular activities, the summer activities. In response to your earlier question, I mentioned, because it was a very good question, that there might be opportunities as we go along to begin to take the various courses and to do some, call it cross-pollination. And certainly that will be done on a day-to-day basis. But, having run 4 major districts and having, been a hawk about accountability, I mean, we will be selecting, state-of-the-art curriculum and instructional models in each of the core subject areas pursuant to state law. We don't have to, we're not ready to talk about how those courses themselves might be connected or integrated with the first responders' experience. That's kind of an organic process. We'll make adjustments as we go along. But right now, there's a demarcation between the core courses that we're offering and the first responder ROTC related activities. That's why we have a longer day. That's why we have an active summer school program, etc. But over time, we will organically look at ways that we can make the sciences, maybe integrate some of the things that are required if you're in the nursing area or the EMS area into the science curriculum or the math curriculum. Many of the military things can be integrated into the math curriculum. That will happen over time. But we'll be more than happy to give you the core course models in each of the prescribed subject areas. Having done this before, we're going to make sure that we're only using the best
Dr.
courses.
Williams is talking about is really something in my mind too. So I think we're good with the course load. It's how does that integrate with the extra relationships with the first responders?
Okay.
So how does that fit? And it'd be okay with me personally to approve this and then have you all come back.
Okay.
After you've had time to put this together. I don't know whether it's a year from now or whenever it is, when you're right before you're ready to go.
Yes.
And let us look at it. And I think that's what
Absolutely.
Dr. Williams is thinking about.
And,
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so that does link back to my earlier comments. And I will say I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force. We're not going to hold it against you for focusing on Army. But that's my other piece, is that I really would like to see you have had an opportunity to visit with our team. Because like JRRTC, all the first responder, police, firefighter, drones, all that is in CTE. And so and then with that, we have Skills USA, all those other opportunities students can have to engage. And I just would want to make sure that as we're looking at the overall picture of instruction and curriculum for the student, that is strongly tied in. And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that they can have that opportunity to go back to being a concentrator, being fully engaged in that program of study. And so however we can make sure that we can see how that's gonna, because right now I don't see
Okay.
how that's gonna be truly braided into.
Okay.
And I like the comments that you made, because that's, once students get into the higher grades, they may not have as many core classes, so they can really begin to focus there, but what is that going to really look like? That's just something that I'm still just not very clear on, and we just want to be a little stronger.
And those are great comments and questions, because frankly, we assumed a lot of that would occur during the development period. So that's what we had anticipated when we would present that. So if you want us to come back and show that prior to opening school, obviously we are more than happy to do that, because we see this as a partnership anyway. So.
Yeah.
I think from what I'm hearing, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but the panel is quite excited by what you're planning, and they want to kind of see that schedule of some of those electives and summer plans, and then maybe which courses you have integrated, knowing that as you're building the different grade levels. So maybe if they plan to make a very short presentation prior to the beginning of school next year, and present any documents or visuals that kind of show what you've been able to do to that point, would that be acceptable?
Or much earlier?
Yes, because we'll
When
need
you're
to
ready.
wait for ourselves by
Yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
we'll need.
When
we'll
you're
need
ready
much
prior
earlier.
to school starting. Dr. Williams, does that meet your need?
Absolutely. I think this is a great program. We don't have anything like it in the state. So to have students to just get to be exposed to the military at an early age, to first responders, this is right on point. We just, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm off base here, approving it now with the requirement for them to come back, whatever the appropriate time to review, that would be great.
Yeah. We can be back in 6 months, so we can be back way ahead of time.
Just communicate with Mr. Johnston to
Absolutely.
get on an agenda, and
Very good.
we'll get that taken care of. Any additional questions or comments from panel members? Then I'm ready for a motion.
So move.
Okay, there we go. Do we need to add the caveat about the 6 months?
I'm sorry.
Do we need to add the language about 6 months coming back, or?
He'll get with Mr. Johnston and get that scheduled.
Okay, so
Okay,
I second.
second. I have a motion from Dr. Williams and a second from Ms. Wright McMurray for approval of the Arkansas Military and First Responders Academy charter application for 5 years, with a report due back to this panel before the start of the school year.
Okay, thank you so much.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
very much.
presentation. If you will wait just a moment, you'll
Yes,
get
ma'am.
to hear from every panel member
Okay.
of why they voted for the application. And this voting sheet will become part of the documentation for our state board.
Okay. Okay, thank you all.
so much
And
for
thank
your
you all,
time.
Dr. Williams, and everyone on the screen. Thank you so
And a
much.
big thank you to
Thank you.
APSRC as well. They were a wonderful partner through this. Now I can start looking for a house.
There you go. Well, welcome to Little Rock.
Thank you.
Dr. Flowers?
I support the approval of this charter. Given the very structured and disciplined environment, it is my expectation that this will promote a great learning environment to successfully integrate first responder courses with your core curriculum. Thank you.
Ms. Saraceni?
Approve the expansion of AMFRA into Arkansas. Look forward to seeing the impact on student learning through this unique learning experience.
Dr. Williams?
I'm off mute. Yes, I am. Support the motion. AMFRA would provide an educational option for students and parents that is not currently available.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes, I support the application and feel like this is a unique and well-considered program that will advance education to at-risk students.
Representative Hodges?
I approve this application. AMFA will offer students a unique opportunity to learn about service in the armed forces and first responder careers. They have a record of serving low-income and minority students, which stands out to me. So I think this is a unique and exciting addition to the area. So I'm very much in favor of the application. Thank you all.
Ms. Wright McMurray?
I voted for. I support this application. This will be a great opportunity for students to prepare for military service and gain valuable exposure to career technical occupations. They will be better prepared for education and careers. Thank you.
Congratulations, and we'll see you at the next
Thank you very
state
much.
board meeting.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Panel members, any additional discussion? I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
Move.
I have a motion from Ms. Wright McMurray and a second from Mr. Baldwin to adjourn. All those in favor? Meeting is
Aye.
adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Right.